Okay, guys, I'm gonna finish the rest of the book. I know I was supposed to do it the other day. His loyalty. This is for you because you reminded me yesterday that you wanted to finish hearing the rest of the book. So here is the rest of the Demetrius Smith book. All right, here we go. And we're on page 232, and I'm gonna go ahead and go all the way to the end. All right. It's gonna be to read out loud. Okay, hold on.
After learning that Robert was not comfortable with me driving Daryl's car, Daryl came through for me like a true friend and helped me to get a 1992 black Honda Accord.
Hold on. Let me start it from the
After
top.
learning that Robert was we made After learning that Robert was not comfortable with me driving Daryl's car, Daryl came through for me like a true friend and helped me to get a 1992 black Honda Accord. Daryl, he was sympathetic to my needs and he wanted me to be there. He knew I was a hardworking, sincere and dedicated worker. I was very upset at R. Kelly for the jealousy he portrayed regarding me driving Daryl's car. I felt like when I made an appearance around people, it was a reflection of him, making him look good. He did not see it that way. He was on some other ego trip. He had to be the only one in our posse to shine. It was always about his selfish ambition or conceited attitude. He was never willing to consider the needs of others unless there was something in it for him. Nonetheless, I continued working earnestly. I enjoyed the attention I received from the record company and all the other people that sought R. Kelly's services. I was the man to see or talk to in connection with R. Kelly. Even Barry was calling me to talk to me about upcoming events. He wanted me to relay to R. Kelly. In spite of the Aaliyah incident, Barry was still R. Kelly's manager and he kept it business. I admire Barry, but then again, who would turn down millions over a sex scandal? Robert wasn't allowed to contact Aaliyah again after the marriage scandal. I think he went through guilt trips, treating me the way he did. If I stayed away from him, he would call and talk about how much he missed the old days. He would tell me how he wished he would have listened to me about Aaliyah. I remember right after we came off the road, after the marriage, Robert bought a cell phone for Aaliyah and I sent it to her. It was their secret phone. Later, her family found out. For a long time, Robert wouldn't change his phone number in hopes that one day Aaliyah would call. I remember another time, he cried telling me how much he missed her and her mom. For over a month, Rob stayed in the Chicago Nico Hotel, and he slept in the closet. He said it was the darkest place he could be. He said he wanted to fall out of the world. I was actually worried about Robert. After 2 weeks he came out of the closet. He was passionate with his desire to get back into the studio. He buried himself into his music and laid down the tracks to the song Trading My Life, which he wrote for Aaliyah. It was during his time of pain and suffering that I stood close by him. I would overlook his selfish ways and make sure he was up. But right after the storm was over, he was back to being that fool, right back to having a faucet attitude. Sure, I wanted to be paid, but it was hard for me to sit back and watch him do things that would really hurt him in the long run. Everyone knew I had Rob's best interest at heart. No one knew him like I did, and I was disoriented over how the closeness R. Kelly and I shared over the years was dwindling away. At times, when Rob was sitting at the piano in the studio, I would walk up to him and ask him to play a song entitled Hard Times. This was one of the songs he used to sing in the subways. My reason for asking him to sing that song was because it always seemed to bring him back in touch with where we had come from. As he would play and sing, I would join in and sing the background vocals, and together we would go back in time. We would reminisce a little over how far we had come, and I'd tell him, "Look how far you came, Rob. I'm still trying to get there." He didn't want to hear that, and it changed the mood. No longer did the reminiscing have any value to where we had been. Rob and I didn't hang out at all anymore. I didn't feel I was part of his plan any longer, and at the same time, I was trying to maintain my means to support my children. Dilemma after dilemma, I just could not seem to find my way through. Chapter 22. More drama. I was dealing with loneliness and distress. I was a wandering spirit who was lost with nowhere to hide, and I had nowhere to go that I could call my own. Here I was, a loyal, humble servant working for a person who didn't seem to appreciate me. Even though I believed R. Kelly's talent was an anointing, he was constantly tearing me down. There were always problems occurring that could have been avoided had Robert not been so self-centered. He believed he had control of everything. If I only knew what I know now, I would have been able to project the personal characteristics of his actions in a way that could have made things different. Just as I had been possessed by a demon during my drug addiction in the 80s, here I was faced with another demon I didn't recognize or know how to deal with. Kelly was dealing with a sex demon. This demon made his way into our camp and was working hard at being successful with his job to steal, kill, and to destroy the good that could come out of the gift God had given. The devil's job was to push us away and to keep me struggling to survive while, at the same time, create havoc in Robert's life. It began with Aaliyah. After that, we went through an interval which brought a chain reaction of negative publicity on Kelly and the team of people working with him. Then there came Tiffany Hawkins. She was one of the young ladies that sung background vocals on Aaliyah's back and forth album. She was also one of the young ladies that hung out at Robert's apartment and in the studies with her girlfriends. Tia was a very talented young lady, I might add. I was working with Tia to help her get her career started and had her sign a contract with me as her manager. Robert was messing around with both Tia and Aaliyah at the same time. Tia became disturbed when she learned of Kelly and Aaliyah's relationship. This really messed things up because prior to finding this out, Tia was excited about going out on the upcoming tour with Aaliyah after the release of her album Age Ain't Nothing But a Number. All plans were spoiled when Kelly and Aaliyah broke up because Aaliyah's family wanted nothing to do with anyone that had association with Kelly. Tia was so angry she sought out to hurt Kelly because, as she put it, he a low-down ass dog and I hate him, among other things. She would call the studio repeatedly screaming and yelling. Kelly got frustrated with her calls and would not take her calls anymore. Then she began to call me, leaving me messages to contact her. I didn't want to be in the middle of her and Robert's business, so I ignored her calls. I continued to ignore Tia until one night, she called and left a message on my phone, crying and saying she was about to kill herself. I contacted Robert immediately to let him hear the message. Call her, he said. I did, and she told me she had a pistol and was going to kill herself. She said she wanted to make Robert hurt for the way he lied to her. She said she didn't feel like she had a future anymore. She said a career as a singer was all she wanted. Tia was hysterical, and she cried into the phone. I asked her to let me come over to talk to her, so she agreed to meet with me. Robert agreed that I should go and meet with her, go and see if she got a gun, he said. I met with Tia at the corner of 98th and University behind Chicago State University. When I got out of the car, Tia stepped back. I noticed she had something in her hand. I couldn't see it clearly, but as I walked up on her, she put the object I was looking at to her head. It was a small caliber pistol. Tia wasn't joking. She was crying. Y'all think I'm playing, don't you? She sobbed. Y'all, come on, Tia, what are you doing? What's going on with you? Come on, Tia, I said, pleading with her. It was what I felt I had to do when I saw this girl with that pistol. I wanted her to know that I was compassionate to whatever she was going though. I was hoping she would feel that emotion. I came out here for you. You know I always been straight up with you, just like I used to tell you at nights to go home. I always showed you concern like a little sister, I told her. Tia, don't do this. Come on now, take that gun down. Come on now, babe. Ain't nobody worth you hurting yourself for, baby girl, I said sympathetically. Shocked at the sight of her holding a pistol to her head, I was cautious and concerned for my own life as well. She was not in her right state of mind. I thought, Tia, you don't have to do this, I pleaded. My mind was going fast forward. I was searching for the right words to say to calm her. I didn't want no freak accident happening. What about your son? I asked. That's his baby and he knows it, she said. He don't want nobody else to know it, she continued with tears running down her face. He just lies to me, and now look, Aaliyah can't even talk to me no more. I can't even go on the road with her because of him. I got nothing. He'll feel this, I bet you, she said, rocking back and forth, as if she was scared and nervous at the same time. I thought it was over. I thought at that very moment she was going to pull the trigger. I felt so sorry for her. Tia, I shouted, you can make him pay you. Make him pay for you and your son. I told her, you don't have to hurt yourself. You only gon' be hurting your son and your family, Tia. Robert gon' go on doing what they do. When you gone, baby girl, we'll all be sad for a minute, but life gone goon, Tia. Please don't do this, put that gun down, Tia, please, I begged her. I guess she saw the sincerity in my face as I plead. I felt as if I wanted to cry too. To be honest, I really felt sorry for her. I want him to pay, Johnny. I can't go on tour with Aaliyah now. Her family doesn't want anybody that socializes with him to talk to her. That's my friend, and he was doing her too. I want him to pay, she said, sobbing while the tears ran down her face, like drips from a faucet. Tia, you can talk to a lawyer, I told her. Tia, please put the gun down, please, I begged her. But I want him to hurt, Johnny. I want him to hurt so bad, she said. You could see her pain as she stood there crying. I wanted to just hold her in my arms. She needed to feel love, and I wanted to give it to her, but I wasn't going to walk up on her with that pistol. Tia, he will hurt, babe, and you'll be able to move on with your life if you talk with a lawyer. Please, Tia, I plead with her to put the pistol down from her head. She cried and looked at me. I saw in her eyes that she wanted to give in. I began to slowly walk toward her with my arm shielded out. Come here, Tia. Put that gun down, I said, reaching out to her. I stopped thinking about myself. I was concerned about her. She was in pain and felt all alone. Tia, I'll help you. Just give me the gun, I said. You're just saying that, she said. No, Tia, I'm not. It's not right how he's treated you and that he messed with Aaliyah. When he did that, he messed it up for all of us. I can't work with Aaliyah no more either. I was about to start naming off things that were now affected because we could no longer associate with Aaliyah when Tia interrupted. He doesn't care about nobody, she said with an expression that showed she was mad as hell. You'll be doing him a favor if you hurt yourself. You can come out on top if you get a lawyer. He'll respect you then, Tia, I said. I guess she sensed I was sincere. She began slowly to lower the gun from her head. As I got closer to her, I reached out for the gun and she gave it to me. I put my arms around her and hugged her, patting her like a little baby as she cried in my arms. Don't worry, Tia, it's gon' be all right. We gon' talk to Robert, and I'll help you. I mean it, I told her. And I did mean it. I felt a need to help her. She laid her head on my shoulder as I put the gun on my waist. I pulled out my cell phone and called Robert. You tricked me, she said, and snatched away from me. I held onto her with my free hand. No, I didn't, Tia, but we got a deal with him, I told her, as I held the phone down, lowering my voice and showing her that I didn't want Robert to hear what I was saying to her. Robert's voice came onto the phone line. Hello, I spoke into the phone. Johnny, so what's happening with her? He asked. I was speaking real low as I told Robert she had the gun. Man, Tia's hurting, I said. She was still trying to pull away from me but listened intently as I spoke to Robert. You need to talk to her, Rob. She really feels that you hurt and lied to her, I said. Where you at? He asked. Man, I just talked her out of taking a gun down from her head, I whispered into the phone. Because he acted like he didn't hear me the first time I had told him, he didn't seem concerned at all about that. This angered me. I don't know if he felt the vibe or what. All of a sudden he responded, What? She got a gun? Let me talk to her, he said, in a low tone. I explained to Robert Tia's state of mind and asked him to be kind to her. At first, she refused to take the phone, but it didn't take too much convincing. She wanted to talk to him. It was no doubt that she was weak for him. Tia, talk to Robert. She shook her head no. It's gon' be all right, Tia. Talk to him, I insisted, nodding my head to her to take the phone. She then took it, and without hearing anything, she began to yell into the phone. You just keep lying to me. All you do is hurt people. She screamed into the phone. I sat back on my car as Robert talked to her. After about 5 minutes, she handed the phone back to me. Yeah, Johnny, bring her down here. I'll deal with her when y'all get here, he said and hung up without giving me a chance to say anything. On the way back to see Robert, Tia told me that it didn't matter that I had her gun. She said the next time, she won't call. She said she felt that I was only tricking and lying to her about helping her just like Robert. I talked to her about finding her an attorney. Tia then tried to talk me out of taking her to the studio. She no longer wanted to see Robert. She wanted to go home, but I continued telling her that she needs to face him so that she could clear her head and make up her mind about pursuing an attorney. Once at the studio, I told Robert what had went down regarding the gun. He then took Tia into another part of the studio. I left, taking the .32 pistol with me. Later that night, Robert called me. He was somewhat angry with me for telling Tia to get an attorney. I let him know I felt I had to in order to convince her to give me the gun. He didn't believe she was really going to shoot herself, but I believed different and didn't want to take a chance on that happening. I didn't hear from Tia for a couple of weeks. Then I received a call from her attorney, who wanted to meet with me to discuss Tia's allegations concerning Robert having sex with her as a minor. I went to meet with him to find out what I could so that I could warn Robert and he could prepare himself. I didn't think that the girl was really going to follow up on my suggestion to obtain legal counsel, but she did. It later turned out to be a real case against R. Kelly. Tia told the attorney of all the times she and her young friends had spent with R. Kelly at his Burnham Plaza apartment. She told of all the sexual things he had done with her and her friends at the apartment and at the studio. She even mentioned Aaliyah's name at some of the sleepovers. Several lawsuits were filed against R. Kelly by Tia and her friends. Tia offered me 10% of whatever she would get if I would sign an affidavit, but I declined. I am still trying to figure out myself why. After several attempts of trying to convince me to sign an affidavit, Tia and her attorney stopped calling me. Later, I learned that R. Kelly settled with them as well as Aaliyah and her family. R. Kelly wanted to go to trial with Tia, but was advised to end the scandal before it got out of hand. We felt that Tia and her little friends collaborated together to come up with a story to damage R. Kelly and his career. Nonetheless, it stopped nothing. We continued working and moving ahead. Working with R. Kelly was my life. I was sure we could somehow recover from all the bad publicity that had been printed about R. Kelly. I felt and told Robert that the show and image had to be different, but he didn't listen. He continued on in his shows, running across the stage, holding his private parts and grinding fans, instead of just singing and touching the people with his voice. Meanwhile, I made another attempt to negotiate the 5% pay I was promised years ago. I had an attorney draw up a contract for me, and then I presented it to Daryl, because Daryl had begun to take over a lot of the business matters when it came to Robert, since he and Barry were not speaking. He read over it and felt it was fair for me to receive a percentage, as initially agreed. You've been the man behind him, even before me, and I know I depend on you. It would be hell for me if you weren't here, he told me. Daryl told me that he submitted the contract to Robert and that after the tour we would sit down and work it out. In the meantime, my salary was increased to $900 a week plus a $50 a day per diem. For the time being, I was content with that, or at least until we got back from the overseas tour. I couldn't see myself turning down this money when I needed it. Things would have to be put on hold again. Being overseas was again an exciting adventure for me. Everything went well. No one had to stress over Robert holding the bus up after a show here, overseas. In Europe, Robert performed and we were out of there. After the shows, the bus came, and we had to board them or be left behind. They had different laws concerning the drivers. They could only drive for a certain amount of hours, and if we weren't at our destination by the time their driving time was up, the drivers had the right to park the bus and go rest for 8 hours. We would tell the ladies where we stayed, and if they could drive to our next destination, we would be able to spend a limited amount of time with them. 2 weeks went by fast. When we got back to Chicago, it was as if we had never left to go overseas. Even the plane ride back was fast. I dreaded being home, somewhat because I knew I was faced with the same problems, not having any security for myself. Being on the road, I had a place to come home to, be it a hotel room or the tour bus. There were times when I could go be by myself, close the door and feel a moment of peace. At home, I was a visitor everywhere I went. When we returned, I met with Daryl concerning my contract. Robert wasn't ready to deal with it, he said. He wanted to wait until he was finished with the tour we had scheduled in the States. To compensate me, my pay went up to $950 a week. That was another notch up the scale for me, I thought, so I went along with it. $950 was cool, plus I was still on the payroll of the bus company and all the other companies I hired as vendors for the tour. I was engaged in setting up the Mr. Big tour. Robert was busy working in the studio on the Isley Brothers album. Along with working on the show, Robert and I traveled back and forth to New York shooting videos for his next single, as well as a video with the Isley Brothers. We were set and ready for the Mr. Big tour. Lisa Ray went along with us. This is the tour I think she made her connection that put her in the position where she is today. As far as how well the tour went, things were the same. You would think with all the negative publicity from Tia, her friends and Aaliyah, that he would have learned something or would have grown up at least a little. He didn't. That sex demon had a hold on R. Kelly, and he was blind to the damage he was causing to his career and in the lives of the people that loved him. He knew I would object to anything I thought was hindering his career, so instead of conversing with me, he tried to hide everything from me. He even had the security I hired for him keep me from entering his dressing room. Hold on, Demetrius. Mr. Kelly wants me to check with him before I allow anyone to go in to see him. To say I was frustrated would be an understatement. I was fighting to protect someone who didn't have any idea what he was doing. I was mad as hell when he wouldn't allow me into Robert's dressing room, but I chilled. I allowed him to do his job. When he came back to the door, he told me, Mr. Kelly said he would see you later. What, man, I need to see Rob now. Excuse me, I told him. When I attempted to get past him to enter Robert's dressing room, he put his hands on me to stop me. One word led to another to where I was about to hit him in the head with my walkie-talkie. Robert came out the dressing room just in the nick of time to stop me from getting in a lot of trouble because I was really mad, and if I would have busted him in the head, I was going to jail. I thought Kim was going to work with me as Tyree did. This is what we had talked about before I hired him. Robert came out the dressing room and stepped in the middle of us. Hold on, Johnny man, what's going on? I told him to not let anybody in here. He's doing what I told him, Robert said, seeming angry at me for causing a confrontation. Robert, man, he don't stop me. I'm your main guy. I don't know what's going on in there, pointing to his dressing room. Shit, you could be in trouble or something. He don't keep me out without you telling me. I was angry and Rod heard it in my voice as well as he was looking at me as I was looking Kim up and down. I should be one of the only ones that can come in here and see you and be able to have full access to get to you with no problem. I don't know what's going on with this dude, pointing at Kim, telling me I can't go in. I said to him with a smug look at Kim. Robert then told me to come into the dressing room where we went over the issue and talked about some promotional things he had to do, but overall the situation with locking me out of his dressing room. He asked me to work with him on that. After I left Robert's dressing room, I told Kim he would not be with us long. Yeah, whatever, he said. We did 2 more cities before Robert allowed me to fire Kim. Kim, I felt, was doing too much to get close to Robert. What he didn't know was that Robert and I were together regardless of how things appeared. Kelly's brother, Killa Kelly, was out on tour with us during this time. He was a rapper and was part of the show, so he stayed around Kelly since they started working together. Robert and Killa clashed a lot. They didn't see eye to eye when it came to Killa flowing on the tracks and gaining his identity as a rapper. Robert wanted to dictate how he should be rapping. He wanted to mold Killa to be how he wanted him to be, and Killa had a style of his own. He was well liked and respected by other rappers. Killa was complimented often for his skills in writing and how he flowed. The man had skills. The way I saw it and felt about it, Robert had become a total control freak. I remember one night we were downtown Chicago. We had just come out of a restaurant. As we were walking, Rod paid 2 of our crew members $100 each to walk a full block, holding hands and switching down the street as if they were gay, just for a laugh. How controlling was that? So as he and Killa worked together, Killa had to suck it up and do things his big brother's way. I used to tell him as he walked around angry, "Don't worry about it, Killa. We all waiting on bro to come back for us." He will, I'd tell him. When we were in St. Louis, Missouri, Kelly left his Rolex watch in the dressing room while he went to do his show and it came up missing. Kelly told me that it was my responsibility to secure his personal property. We argued because I never knew what he had or where he put his things, so I didn't feel like it was my responsibility. The argument got heated because he told me that he was docking my pay $150. I was heated, and on top of that, my computer was missing. Someone stole it too. As much as I felt that I would regret it, I felt it was time for me to move on. I knew inside that I couldn't contain my temper any longer, especially with Robert now fucking with my money. I went back into the area, and I told Daryl that I quit. He tried to convince me to be patient, telling me that he would talk to Kelly and work it out. I couldn't. I couldn't just wait any longer. This was the last straw. I couldn't afford to waste any more of my life, hoping my friend would help me come up. My youngest brother, Joshua, was there at the concert. I got him out the crowd, and he took me home. I didn't talk to Kelly or Daryl after that for 3 weeks. I knew that the state-to-state tours Kelly was doing were over and they were on their way overseas to perform again. I had already done all the legwork. I sent the writer, gathered all passport information and made the complete itinerary before I left. All the work was done for whoever would take my place. I was sincerely closing the door here. Chapter 23, Unappreciated. I decided to take this time to get a place to live I could call home and spend my time being a daddy to my children. Right away I sent to Georgia for my son Demetrius and we worked on music. They loved to dance and sing, so I spent my time working with them. I turned into Joe Jackson, so to speak, minus the beatings. They were babies, but they were so talented. I figured if I would put my time and experience into them, I could continue to be in the music business. The kids kept me grounded and were the very reason I did not lose my mind. Inside I was hurting bad over my departure from Kelly. I wanted so much for things to work. I was heartbroken and I had malice in my heart. If it weren't for my children, I would have made good of the thoughts I was having about kicking Kelly's ass. I was angry at him all the time and the loyal service I gave him for him to treat me with no concern the way he had. Hatred for him was building up inside of me. I should have been taken care of a long time ago, I thought. Here I was again, having to start all over. I was living off the money I had made off the Mr. Big tour and the side deals I had made with the vendors. But the money was running short and fast. I had to find a job. Kirk Franklin had been pursuing me for employment as his tour manager when I met him, and his manager while Kelly was doing some work with him in the studio. I sent my resume to him, and a lot of other entertainers and record companies. Kirk's manager wanted to hire me to be his tour manager, but Kelly was working on a song with him, and when he inquired about me, he was told that I worked exclusively for Kelly. That was the same response I got from a lot of the people I sent my resume to in the industry. I didn't know this was going on, and when I called Daryl about it, he said he didn't know anything about it, and there was no way he would blackball me. It was Kirk's manager who told me Robert told her that. The fact that Kelly's camp had a reputation of being unprofessional and, along with the allegations of Kelly having a thing for young girls, it all reflected on me, so my chances of working in the music industry were slim. I'd be flat broke and homeless waiting for something to open up for me. I thought I was ready to diminish my relationship and contacts with Kelly altogether until I received a call from Daryl asking me to reconsider my resignation and to go overseas with Kelly. He said that they were having lots of problems and he needed me over there. Finally, I thought of Lafayette's words, "You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate." I was in a position to ask for more than $850 I was getting from the last tour. I thought about the $150 they had deducted from my pay the last time I was with him. I told Daryl I needed $1,500 a week, plus $50 a day per diem. Daryl never rejected anything I asked for. He always felt I deserved it. He told me he had talked to Kelly and get right back with me. It was within a couple of hours when he called me back. Kelly had agreed with giving me $1,100 a week and $40 per diem per day. I accepted it on the condition that once we got back from overseas, before I would go on another tour or do any other work for Kelly, we'd have to sit down and come to terms over the 5% I was promised from day one, and when I would get to Europe, Kelly would have to let me do my job and listen to me. Daryl agreed. I was flown to London, England, that night. When I arrived, Kelly was in concert at the Wimbledon Arena. I was picked up at Heathrow Airport and taken straight there. When I got there, Kelly's show had just ended. Everyone seemed to be happy to see me, at least all the band members were. Backstage was crowded with people. It was like a circus there, people running around everywhere. Believe it or not, I was happy to be there too, and happy people were glad to see me. When I went to Kelly's dressing room, he was glad as well. "Boy, what's up? I'm glad you made it, man. Let me finish up in here. We'll talk on the bus," he said. I nodded in agreement as I left his dressing room. On my way to the arena, I was given an update on where we were. A martial artist aide told me we were running behind schedule and needed to leave. It wasn't like the other times I had come here. Before or after our performance, we were always rushed out onto the bus and immediately driven on to the next city. Robert had brought his whole act to the UK for real this time. Here and now, their bus drivers were waiting on him. I met with Kirk Townsend, who was hired to take my place. He was so glad to see me when I walked up on him. "Demetrius, man," he said, shaking his head left to right. "I envy you," he said. "I wouldn't want your job for nothing. You can have it back. It is too buck wild out here for me," he said. "Man, I get no cooperation out of Robert. How you do it, I don't know, but I am glad you're here," he said. Kirk told me he never would have thought Robert was so out of order, unprofessional, and unorganized. Immediately, I took charge putting things together. His crew was running around like little mice. They were running around back and forth from the audience to his dressing room, transporting young girls in and out of his dressing room. It seemed as if they were picking the youngest girls from the audience. I didn't fly across the waters to come back into the bullshit. I went back to Kelly's dressing room. I went to him and in a joyful way proceeded to do my job. "All right, Rob, let's get this rolling so we can leave. It's time to roll. We got a lot to go over," I said as I was picking up his bags to take them out. He got offended and told me that I was not about to come in and start giving him orders. I simply told him I did not fly across the world to get caught up in another country for some young girl bullshit. He looked at me surprised that I had said that. I didn't like it that Robert was not conscious of the danger he was putting himself in with the company he was keeping, and I wanted to fight with him now. I wanted to take charge to be his true friend, and if he wasn't going to listen to me, then I couldn't do this again. It was no longer a question in my mind. Underage girls had proven to be his weakness. He was obsessed, sickly addicted. One word led to another, and Kelly and I were arguing. A lot of hurtful things were said. It got heated. I told him I couldn't do it. I couldn't stay unless he allowed me to do my job. After stating that, I left the dressing room. I was hurt. I thought by Robert requesting me to be there, things would be different. I sighed to relieve the stress of my friend continuing to hurt himself. I thought to myself in lonely despair, asking him the question, "Man, Robert, can't you see what you're doing to yourself? I just couldn't reach him or get through to him in any way. As much as I regretted it, I wanted no part of supporting the evilness I saw forming. I just could not do the same things I had been doing with him. I couldn't turn my head and overlook the fact that his boys weren't looking out for his best interest, messing with possibly little girls. I had to let him know by making a stand against him. As usual, it didn't work in my favor. That same night I quit again. Robert was not paying any attention to me as I told him my job was also protecting his image. As far as I could tell, the girls are. Kelly would be entertaining. To be honest, looking at them I could not tell if they were of age. Robert didn't go for the girls I liked, he went for who he liked. They weren't girls of whom I would ask to be my company because for me, they were too young. But for Kelly, I didn't know how old they were. I just hoped he wasn't having a problem with having to have an underage girl. The truth is, being a pedophile is a sickness, and just like any other illness, it needs to be treated. It is no doubt that this is a condition that bears shame, but at the same time, ain't nobody better than nobody else. Who is to say you wouldn't do what I have did, faced with the same situation, or under similar circumstances? There is an old slavery song that comes to mind. Nobody knows the troubles I've been through. I find that to be so true when it relates to my life. When it comes to people accepting one another for who they are and helping people to what they need, many of us fall short. We see people to be who we want them to be, and that's not always who they are. We are all made better in God's plan. Nobody knows what we go through that makes us who we are or makes us why we are the way we are. We are meant to be who we are, and we go through things because it shapes us into the greatness God called us to be. When we help someone that is going through adversity and trials, or let me say, when we help people, period, I believe it allows us to bring out our best in each other, and when we can bring out our best of each other, I believe it brings us closer to touching greatness. I have been through some things, and there are some things I might have done that you would think I should have known better, but I really didn't. We see each other go through things. Therefore, ask me about me. I just might not know what you think I should know. I believe we are here to help one another, and by caring for one another, we will grow into our gift to enjoy our gift of life. I don't think that anyone should ever assume anything of anyone. Simply ask, and it will bring answers. It is time to take the band-aids off and time to cut the poison out of the wound of the 80s. The way I see it, we have come a long way in life as people. We have all gone through some things, and ain't none of us right beyond sin, and we are nowhere near perfect. The word said that we have all fallen short. Magic Johnson brought people into the awareness of AIDS. He stood up to fight, and because of his integrity and his desire to help be a part in making someone else's life better, he saved lives. We need to help each other, and we need to stand up to fight against any sickness or disease that is poison to our bloodstream and to our race as a people. I am not speaking black and white. I am an American. For my Mr. Kelly, I was willing to stand by him, and what he was going through was normal to me, to some extent that is, but we were at a point here where it was time to get control of things and balance ourselves. And if what he was going through with these girls was not viewed as a problem to him, that was all on him. Robert was not a bad person, a bit selfish, a lot, but he was not a bad person. He was drunk with the joy of being who he wanted to be, and that was all cool too. But it was time to begin to have balance now. My overall objective was to run a smooth tour, make some money, and have some fun. Robert, I don't even think he was seeing me. He was too busy with himself. The business part of the tour, he was giving me hell with running a smooth ship. Mr. Kelly was not seeing things, and I mean that literally. He was not looking. Robert was too busy having all the fun. 1 James 1:17 read, "Every good gift is from God." And I have also read, "What the devil means for evil, God will turn it to good." Romans 8:28 said, "And we know that all things work together for the good to those who love God and to those who are called according to his purpose." Kelly, to me, is a good gift, and I would hope that he loves God. But as we all know, denial is blinding. Carry your ass back home if you can't do what I tell you. Kelly said to me as I walked out of his dressing room, and that's what I did. The next morning, the promoter paid for me a first-class ticket back to Chicago. As soon as I got back to Chicago and barely settled at home, I got a call from Barry. Yep, Barry was still Robert's manager. They had worked it out somehow. What I figured was that Barry was only in it for the money then. I had heard rumors that Robert had paid out about $3 million or more to compensate somewhat for the pain he had caused Aaliyah and her family. Barry and I talked about what had gone down in Europe. He told me that I had to learn to put personal issues aside when it came to business and to do what was necessary to continue to feed my family. I thought about his situation, and I was sure then he was there for the money, and thought to myself how right he was. Sometimes, you have to look past or go around things to get where you need to be when it comes to making things work for you, he said. Look at what he did to me and my family. Was I supposed to walk away? No. Now what we have is unfinished business. We laughed for a moment and I got serious again. It has got to be hard for you, I suggested. It has been hard because I have feelings for Robert like a son, and he betrayed me. But business is business, he said. I have been talking to Robert, but strictly about business now, and I talked to him about you last night. I told him how he is not allowing you to do your job, and I mentioned to him how loyal I thought you have been to him. We had a serious talk about you. I could hear it in Barry's voice, sincerity, and I began to feel that emotion. Next week when he gets home, he's flying into New York to attend the Shaft premiere. I told him I wanted you there, so we could sit and talk. Get organized so he'll know exactly what your job is. Robert wants you there. He wants you to run his tours, and I want you there. You're supposed to be there running things. Will you come? He asked. I agreed to meet with them. I had great admiration for Barry and thought if he was going to still be there, I was willing to at least sit down and talk. I was flown to New York the night of the Shaft movie premiere. I walked down the red carpet with R. Kelly and Barry, shaking hands with some of the actors that were there. That night I got to hug Ms. Vanessa Williams, and she was looking good. She was not really dressed up, she was homegirl looking, as if she was at home, there at the theater. She had stepped away from doing choirs, kind of like I'm going back and chill as soon as this is over, kind of, looking good as she was. She made me smile. Hugging her, and the beauty of Ms. Williams for me that night was watching her smile. In so many ways I was amazed. I even shook hands with Samuel L. Jackson. He was smooth and cool as he made his way through the crowd to exit after the show. It was a celebratory event, and as much as I would have liked to have had fun enjoying the festivities, my mind was on the meeting with R. Kelly and Barry. As much as I enjoyed the lifestyle and the true feeling of exultation, I just could not seem to understand how Robert dealt with being famous. I don't know why, but Robert never wanted to socialize with his peers. He felt being inaccessible made people more in awe of him. In my book, he was awful. The boy should have been an actor. The facade he was portraying was all an act. After the Shaft premiere ended, R. Kelly, Barry, and I got into the limousine and headed back to the hotel. On the way there, we discussed the issues and concerns I was having when on the road with R. Kelly. He did not deny holding everyone up for hours while he was having his autograph sessions in his dressing room. The fact that he deducted money from my check because he felt he could, and how he made things difficult for me when everything was organized. He agreed to try to work with me and not against me. When I brought up the 5% that I was promised, he said that he did not see that happening because it would equal up to him owing me money over all the years that we had been working together. He told me what he would do was pay me $1,100 a week, and after 6 months he'd raise my pay to $1,500. Then if all continued to go well, he'd give me another raise. He agreed to replace the computer that was stolen off the bus from me, and said he'd give me a bonus to help me out with my financial problems. I was with that deal. It sounded good to me, and I thought at the same time, I would have the leverage I needed to establish a better working relationship with Robert. I knew the 5% was a done deal. I wasn't going to get that. I accepted their offer to start over. The next day, R. Kelly and I boarded a plane back to Chicago. It was like old times for a few weeks. Once we got home, Wes stayed in the studio. Things were showing potential of working out. My enthusiasm went to another level when Michael Jackson's camp called requesting R. Kelly to write a song for him. Robert and I had always talked about this. I remember telling him in his younger days that he would write for Michael as well as other famous entertainers. This was all becoming a reality. The vision was in clear view. R. Kelly would be in the studio acting like Michael to get in his writing mood to write the song for him. He came up with quite a few songs for Michael to choose from. You Are Not Alone was the song Michael chose. I was excited to be the one to set up all the arrangements for Michael Jackson to come to Chicago and record at CRC Studios with R. Kelly, but right before Michael Jackson was to arrive, R. Kelly changed. He pushed me back and told me that I couldn't be there when he came. I was more than disappointed after making all the arrangements and then being shut out. Again, I had to hide my anger and disappointment and keep things professional. There was no doubt I had plans to be as personable as I could to impress Michael Jackson. I wasn't going to kiss his ass, but I had planned on making an impression on Michael, but my plans were ruined. R. Kelly treated me as if I was his butler. After I got him everything he needed, he dismissed me and told me to take the week off. While Michael Jackson was there, I stayed away as he requested. My days away I spent with my children. It was always pleasant when my children and I were all together. All of the traveling around the world with R. Kelly, and working long hours. I did it for my children. I didn't run the streets chasing women or live a fast life. I worked hard, sending money, providing for them as best as I could and as best as I knew how. The times we spent together were treasured. I just wanted to able to come to a home with my children, but it just seemed so hard to achieve. There was always unwarranted drama when God had provided a way to make things pleasant. We should have been happy, especially since we struggled all our lives. There was plenty of money to go around so that everyone could live comfortably. All it took was for Robert to do the right thing by taking care of people properly and not treat us like slaves or undocumented workers. During this time, everybody was struggling to make ends meet. When I say everybody, I mean the crew, the guys we hung out with. Robert's brother Carrie called me one evening and said, "Man, I need you because I'm tired of my brother treating me like shit," he said. He was upset. "I'm gonna do something about it too. I don't give a fuck. That nigga don't give a fuck about me or my brother," he said. "Killa, what are you talking about?" I asked. I had no idea of what he was tripping on. I knew he and Robert didn't see eye to eye because Robert would not do anything to help him get his career off the ground as a rapper, but I did not have a clue about what he was talking about this time. "I got those tapes I took from his ass and I'm gonna sell them," he said, "and I want you to help me." "Johnny, what tapes?" I asked. "Man, Johnny, you know all the time he tapes himself fucking them hoes he be with, and I don't even give a fuck." I took a couple of his tapes out his bag. "Fuck Rob, Johnny, man. I'm tired of that motherfucker treating me as if I ain't his brother."
Y'all, did y'all hear that? Did y'all hear that? His brother took the tapes. Carrie, are y'all listening? Are you guys listening? I'm checking your pulse. Are y'all up? Yes, Kimberly. That's why I tell you, read these books. That's why I got.
I'm tired of that motherfucker treating me as if I ain't his brother. He don't care shit about us. Robert just looks out for Robert. All he do is give them bitches anything they want. He doesn't give us a second thought about shit. We don't fucking matter to him, and I'm his brother. Killa went on raving reasonless. He was running off at the mouth nonstop and totally irrational. He was angry and looking for a reason to feel good about what he was threatening to do to his brother. Yes, Robert did not care about any of our needs, and that hurt the people that were really close to him, but I could not see myself helping Killa cross Rob the way he was talking about doing him. I had faith that his brother would come around once things got to a boiling point, and we were at that point. If I had anything to do with it, things were going to get better for us all. "Killa, you can't do shit like that to your brother," I told him. "Man, he don't give a fuck about me or you either, Johnny. You just be working your ass off and that motherfucker don't care about you." Killa was really upset and he wouldn't let me to say anything. He went on expressing his anger. "Man, Johnny, you remember when that nigga got his Benz? You was cleaning it for him one day and he told me you was a good bitch to have around, and if you was a woman, he'd marry yo ass. Now you tell me, if that's a motherfucker that care anything about you, you know I'm telling the truth," he demanded. Killa struck a nerve in me when he said that. Those words kept ringing in my head. Good bitch to have around. But now I am seeing something that is giving me some understanding that purpose is a question. I remember back when we first started traveling back and forth to New York, Rob and I would be in a 2-bedroom suite, and oftentimes he would walk to and from rooms, freely and in front of me, but naked. He would laugh at times as if to take it for a joke, prancing through the room playfully. "What's wrong with you, dude? Put some cloths on, fool, when you come through here," I would yell out in disgust. I wasn't into that, nor was I looking at Rob or thinking of him to have gay tendencies, but sitting here thinking back, if he said that to his brother, maybe it is a good man he misses having around. The nerve of that dude. I saw Robert as my brother, the brother I never grew up with, and my loyalty to and for him was sincere. When Killa told me that, I felt like I had been stabbed in the heart. But at the same time, I had to keep my cool. I didn't want any part of helping Killa. I thought he was wrong. I mean, Kelly was his brother, and I just didn't think it was right to sell out your brother, something Killa was threatening to do. Killa went on in his rage. "Johnny, if you ain't gon' help me, then fuck it, man. I'll call somebody else, and you can tell him I don't give a fuck," he said, and I could hear the frustration and seriousness in his tone. "Where are you, Killa?" I asked. He said that he was on the south side of Chicago. I agreed to meet with him at his place. Killa Kelly was a good kid. He had been going through some hard times himself, and to be as young as he was, his heart was with his children. He had about 8 of them, I think. Killa was only 23 years old. He could rap and write like Kelly did with Randy, but Killa didn't get the opportunity that his brother got. He was hopeful that through his brother he would get his big break. We all thought that his opportunity was in his brother. We always thought Robert would record him and give him the same start he had been given, but Robert only looked out for Robert and the girls he kept around. Killa was upset over the whole thing and felt like all Robert needed to do was introduce him to his major connections. Killa felt like he could seal the deal for himself. As I saw him, Killa was an awesome talent. But now he was frustrated, because he felt his brother should help him, and since he wouldn't, Killa felt he wanted to make his brother feel the pain of not caring for a loved one. Killa wanted to hurt his brother back. Fuck my brother were Killa's words, and from the tone I heard over the phone, he meant every word of it. When I got to Killa's house, he was home alone. He played the videotape for me. He said he had taken it out of Kelly's gym bag. The tape showed Kelly having sex with several girls and women. One of the scenes was with Robert's wife, baby girl, before they were married. Another was with a white girl. He was eating her asshole out on top of his pool table at his house on George Street, and the other scene was of him and a young girl. He was teaching her how to give him head. Killa showed me the tape because he thought I would be receptive to helping him obtain some money because of the way his brother was treating him. I wasn't feeling that, even though I was insulted over what he had told me about me being a good bitch. But the thought of betraying Robert didn't develop at all in my mind, because I knew that people and their lives would be devastated if this got out. I felt I had already been a part of too many ruins. I couldn't entertain the thought of helping him, especially since the intent was not meant for good, but for nothing but more evil. I was just there to see what he had. I always felt Kelly would come around and do the right thing by us all. It wasn't too hard to convince Killa to allow me to talk to his brother. I don't believe Killa really wanted to hurt his Robert. It was just that he was hurting himself and he needed help. Johnny, before I go out here and stick a motherfucker up, I'll do this, cause Johnny, I would not leave my brother out here hurting as I am. Man, I can't even feed my kids, he would say. I was hoping I could get Robert to see the pain people around him were going through, because he was not receptive to anyone's needs. These were the people who he was close to and who had also sacrificed in the early years, up until now. I told Killa that blood was thicker than water and that it was not right for him to do what he wanted to do to his brother. While I was at Killa's house, I convinced him to allow me to call Daryl. I assured him that Daryl would not say anything until he heard from me. He allowed me to call, and Daryl agreed to wait to hear from me before he mentioned anything to Robert. He told me he was leaving it up to me to handle it. Daryl knew what Killa was going through because he had given Killa money on several occasions. I spent about 2 hours talking with Killa, and he gave me the okay to allow Daryl to confront Robert about the tapes he had. Barry was in town at the time. When Daryl called me back, he told me he talked with them, and they were willing to assist Killa, but they wanted Killa to come to the studio where Robert and Barry were. Killa said he didn't trust them, but said he trusted me, and if I said it was okay, then he would go with me to the studio to try to resolve some of the things he was going through. Killa gave me the tape, and me, with my stupid loyal self, took the tape right to the studio instead of going somewhere to make a copy for security purposes. But I wasn't like that and didn't feel I had to be like that with a person. I took the tape to the studio where Daryl, Barry, and Kelly were waiting for me. Barry put the videotape into the recorder. He viewed just a portion of it, showing the scene where Kelly was in the sexual act with a white woman, eating her asshole out. Barry immediately took the VCR tape out of the tape deck and said he didn't want to see it. He then ripped the tape apart, destroying it. After the tape was disposed of, Robert, Barry, and Daryl went into another room in the studio along with Killa. I don't know what happened in their meeting, but later that night, Robert accused me of putting Killa up to trying to extort him. I argued against the false accusation he made towards me, but it was fruitless. As the days went on, Kelly told Daryl to stop allowing me to hold on to Bass Productions company checkbook. He said he no longer trusted me. It's nothing you can tell me to make me change my mind. Kelly told me when I confronted him about his distrust. If you distrust me, Rob, then I no longer need to be here. This is all bullshit you keep putting me through, I told him. Then you need to talk to Barry because I don't need you here if I can't trust you, he said. I didn't feel like going through any arguments with him because I was already 5 minutes away from taking off his head. The nerve of this snake, after all I had been through with him. I felt betrayed and disrespected, but I felt like David when he didn't understand why Saul wanted him dead. 1 Samuel 24:8. My feelings were the same. I didn't want to bring harm on Robert because I felt he was one of God's anointed. but I could not understand why he did not want for me to get ahead. All that I did for him, and all the money I saw him waste. If I wanted to take Robert for anything, I would have done it way before then. Robert was so selfish. I can remember when he first bought the house on George Street, he was so excited that he had a 20-foot long fish tank built in the wall. I don't know how much the tank cost, but I do know that he bought 2 sharks that cost $30,000 apiece. There we were. All the people that worked for him were broke, and he was spending that kind of money on fish. On top of that, the fish all died. If I wanted to get at him, I could have arranged to be robbed. When I carried $60,000 and $70,000 around in the trunk of the car for his disposal, I had his bank account number and all access. I could have cleaned out his bank account and took off. I picked all the cash up after every concert. I could have taken a large portion of the money for myself before turning it in. I'm just not that kind of person. I was outright loyal to this man. But here I was hurt and being driven away for something I did to protect him. It was the story of my life thus far. Just when things looked as if they were coming together, that old demon of destruction would come out of nowhere and bring havoc into my life. When I spoke with Barry, he felt the relationship that R. Kelly and I had ran its course and advised me that for my best interest, I should put some space between us, at least for a while, he said. Barry asked me what I felt R. Kelly owed me, and of course I told him 5%. You need to get past that. That's not going to happen, he told me. What I'm gonna do is tell Robert that you'd like to step away for a while because you're not getting along. I'm also going to ask him to give you a severance pay for all the years that you've worked with him. I'll be on your side in letting him know giving you severance payment would be the right thing for him to do. Let's say about $50,000. Would that be a good number for you to organize yourself? He asked. 50 grand, I thought, all at one time. What choice did I have? Yeah, that would be cool, I told him. I could get myself together with that, I agreed. It was 3 days later when Barry got back with me. He told me R. Kelly would not agree to give me $50,000, but he did agree to $30,000. I met with Barry at the Knickerbocker Hotel in downtown Chicago to pick up the check. He had a couple of Muslim brothers meet me at the front desk to escort me to his room. I was excited to get that money. I was disappointed it was not 50,000, but I was in no position to turn anything down. I didn't know what I was going to do with the money, but what I did know is that I felt good about the fact that I was going to be home with my 4 children and be able to provide for them, at least for a while. My plan was to get a job as soon as possible so that I wouldn't have to spend all my money fast. When I got the check from Barry, it was for $24,000. I thought it would be for $30,000. I said. Robert told Daryl to deduct the computer he just brought you, the watch that was stolen from him, and also for my computer that was stolen, he said as he hunched his shoulders, giving me a smirk as if you know who you're dealing with. Here I was again, wanting to tear Robert's head off. It was then I understood why Barry had security with him, because if not for the Muslim brothers being there, I would have probably went off into a rage on him. I was boiling hot inside. Nothing was going right for me, yet again. I asked myself, why were people taking my kindness for a weakness? As I drove home with the $24,000 check in my hand, I told Barry right before I left, all right, Barry, but you know this is wrong. He gon' end up fucking over you too. I was warning him about Robert. Watch, I told him. Robert always crosses the ones closest to him. Watch what I tell you, Barry. I shook his hand as I left. Take care, B, I said and walked away. Chapter 24. On my own. The $24,000 wasn't a lot of money at all for all the time and hard work I put in with Robert. All the years of service, I thought, as I drove home to my children, and this was the thanks I get. Oh well, I was determined to make the best of it. The first thing I had to do was to find a bigger and better place for me and my children to live in. My mother had given me a number to call to see if I could qualify for low-income housing. I wasn't too proud to seek assistance for my children and me, plus they were already getting public aid because I never got insurance for them. At first, I used to be a bit embarrassed to go to the aid office, but I put that pride aside. My old days of doing wrong to make a buck were put behind me the day Demetrius Jr. was born. I wasn't going to do anything to jeopardize me being taken away from my children. For them, I was all they had, and for me, they were all I had. I needed them even more than they needed me. They were my life and my reason for living. Being with them, watching them grow and helping them develop was my very purpose. Daily as I watched them grow, I saw in them the entertainer that was in me. There was nothing more important than for me to make a better way for them. When I made that phone call to the number my mother had given me, I got through to an operator who questioned me on my financial background. She determined that because I was raised in the projects and been on welfare all my life and now being a single parent, I qualified to receive Section 8 housing. I thought it was truly a blessing because now I could afford to maintain housing for my children and myself without having being pushed into a corner to make ends meet. Once I received the paperwork from Cook County Housing Authority, I found a 3-bedroom house in Wheeling, Illinois. The rent was $1,200 a month. Section 8 would pay only $900 of the rent per month. But the owner did not want to rent to me because I was not employed. He felt I would have a problem paying him the $300 balance of the rent every month. That would have been a true assumption had it not been for the severance check I had received from Bass Productions. I made a deal with him, agreed to pay him $300 in advance for the whole year of the rental agreement if he would accept the Section 8. He agreed, and I gave him a check for $3,600. Everything was working and falling in place. Once the contract for the Section 8 was approved, I was able to move into my first house. Even though it was a rental, for the time being it was mine. I had a yard with grass, a 2-car garage, wall-to-wall carpeting, and the best part of it all was that it was a safe environment for my children. It was out of the hood. Don't get me wrong, it's not that I was looking down on the hood and being raised in the projects. I learned some very valuable lessons coming up on the west side of Chicago and the projects. It was just that the street lessons my children would need to know I would teach them. I wanted them to have the best of everything I didn't have. The school system in Wheeling was better. They would not have to worry about being involved in gangs. I wanted them to be able to focus on school and getting their education. When it came time for us to move into our house, my children were so excited. Finally, we were all going to live together. Ashley was so excited because she would have her own room. "This is my room, Daddy," she would say joyfully. My 3 sons Demetrius, Michi, Dink, Lil Cool, and Danda D. Jilla were so glad they were going to be together. They had a thing for competing with each other. I was so blessed and not like other fathers who had baby mama drama. Lawinda had never had a problem with my son, Demetrius, being with me. She knew I wanted my children to be under the same roof and she supported that. She once told me, "You his daddy, how else is he going to know how to be a man?" The house was totally empty when we first moved in, with the exception of the few clothes we had. I had never had furniture, dishes or anything, so I was going to have to go shopping. We went to Harlem Furniture Store and picked out furniture for every room. I brought a living room set, big screen television with a surround sound stereo system, complete bedroom sets for my children's rooms, curtains, pots, pans, and, for myself, a king-size bed, as well as televisions, for each room. This was the happiest time of my life. I knew that finally I was going to be able to come home and be with my 4 children every day. I was going to be able to wake up every morning and have breakfast with my family. This was all I ever wanted to be able to do. It was around August 1996 when my financial situation began to change. I got a job answering phones and taking catalog orders for J.C. Penny. It was a pretty good job. I was only earning $8.55 an hour. It was a means that I felt was better than nothing at all. During this time, I was dating Sonia Miles, a young lady I was attracted to. She was special. As a matter of fact, I used to rush home from work every evening to get home to that girl. With Sonia and all the children, everything was complete in my life. Her family, my family and our friends would come by for a visit and compliment us on how good and happy we looked together. I was very happy. On October 16, 1996, I asked her to marry me. I gave her a ring. I got on my knees. We cried together and she accepted. I was in love. For the first time in my life I felt that I was at home with Sonia. My family was complete. The little money I was making working for J.C. Penney was not enough to feed and clothe a family of 5. But I was willing to go to work, as long as I could come home to my children and Max under one roof. Yes, indeed, I was willing. Now I had a girlfriend and with both of us making a little money I felt together we could make ends meet. One good thing was I could at least feed the whole family because I was receiving food stamps. That little $24,000 had all been spent within a 2-month period. My babe, Sonia, she didn't complain. We were comfortable with each other, so that made things bearable. But with birthdays coming up, the children needing things for school and Christmas right around the corner, I began to stress about being broke all the time. Hell, I wanted to be able to take my woman out, and I wanted to be able to take my children out to Chuck E. Cheese, Great America, or just to the beach. It had been years now since I was not able to go to the mall and just shop. We would go to the mall, walk around as an outing, and watch others spend money. Being broke was getting to me. It was getting to all of us in some way or another. I had a partner named Rome who lived on 79th and Ashland. Rome and I had hung out together smoking for many nights. He had walked away from the pipe long before me and vowed he would never use again. I ran into him when I was out and about in the area of his house one day. I didn't know where he lived, I just happened to run into him. We were friends and struggled together in our younger years. During that time, we became die-hard friends. If there was some kind of dispute with somebody, I had his back and he had mine. I decided to ride south to pay him a visit. I heard he came up in the dope game, and sure enough, when I met with him, he had come up. He was juggling keys of cocaine and pounds of weed. I sat and talked with him about my financial situation, and he was rather upset over what R. Kelly did to me when I was as loyal as I was to him. He told me, fuck that nigga, cool. You know it ain't nothing with me and you. Shit, you my brother. What you need? I can give you an ounce of this powder and a pound to get you started. Will that work for you? He asked. I thought about it for a moment. I hadn't been around or seen any cocaine since 1985. The thought of having some of that in my possession, and an ounce at that, was making me have second thoughts. I decided against it. Hey, Rome, the weed I can handle, but I don't want no cane, I told him. That's cool, cool. You know you better than me, he said. I remember the times we went out on that shit. I put it in my mind not to ever fuck with it again, and I haven't, other than selling that shit. If you don't know for sure that you not gon' fuck with that shit, then you doing the best thing for yourself to not want to handle the shit. I took the pound of weed that day and went home. Sonia and I bagged the weed up. We made it known to the few friends we had that we had weed for sale, but by us just starting off in the business and being in the suburbs away from everybody, we weren't making any money, so Sonia and I ended up smoking the whole pound. We tried to sell it. She would even go and stay at her apartment complex because there were more people around her place that smoked and hung outside the building. But when I would allow her to go home, I would miss her at night, so having her out selling weed wasn't what I wanted her doing. I made enough money off the pound to pay Rome what it cost. He only wanted $400 back, and then he gave me another pound. Sonia and I would smoke, smoke, smoke. We didn't make much profit at all. Things started to change when I began going to my mother and borrowing money from her. One day Sonia, our children, and I were going on a trip to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to visit my sister Linda. We were at a gas station getting gas and I only had a couple of dollars. When I pulled out my wallet, I noticed that I still had R. Kelly's old American Express credit card with my name on it. I slid it through the gas machine and it still worked. I filled up my tank. I thought it would have been canceled, but it worked. I went on a shopping spree on the way to Milwaukee. We stopped and brought boots for the children. Then we went to the mall in Milwaukee and I brought gold chains, clothes, and when we got back home, we went to the mall again. I even took my mother furniture shopping at Harlem Furniture and brought her a living room set. I brought my sister Chi-Chi a computer, printer and all. Some of my family members who were hurting and sleeping on crates, I took them shopping, and brought beds for brother's wife because he was incarcerated at the time. I also furnished Sonia's house with a living room set and a bedroom set for her son, Malcolm. It seemed that once she got that furniture, then things began to go downhill. Sonia was still living by herself, and I was living in my house. More often she would spend days and sometimes weeks at my place, running back and forth from her house to mine, so I suggested she move in with me since she was always there and we wanted to be together. For some odd reason, out of the blue, she decided that she wanted to spend time at her house. I would miss her on days when she didn't come over and stay with me, so we would spend time talking on the phone. Malcolm always wanted to be at my house, so I would keep him with me while she stayed home. One night my mom came by and it got too late for her to drive home, so she thought about spending the night. That same night I talked to Sonia and before saying good night, she kept reiterating how tired she was. I wish you were over here to give me a back rub, babe, she said before we ended our conversation for the night. She did not know my mother was staying over when we were on the phone. When my ma said that she was staying for the night, I decided to go spend the night with Sonia at her apartment and give her that back rub that she had been wishing I was there for. I was going to surprise her with a bottle of Rianiti Lambrusco wine and kiss all over her body, all night. You had to be buzzed in to get into her building. However, when I arrived at the door, someone who knew me was going in, so they let me in. When I got up to her apartment, I heard music and thought to myself, I thought she had be sleep. When I knocked on the door, she asked, "Who is it?" "It's me, babe," I responded. Instead of her opening the door, I heard whispering. A few moments later, she opened the door. "What took you so long?" I asked. "I had just got out of the shower. I didn't have on any clothes," she said, looking a bit nervous. "Well, good," I said, looking at her with her robe on, stepping in and grabbing her at her waist and giving her a kiss. "What are you doing here, babe?" she asked, closing the door behind me as I walked in. "My mother came over while we were on the phone. She's there with the children and I thought I'd surprise you," I said as I reached at her to pull her near. The house smelled of some good weed, and there were 2 cans of beer sitting on her coffee table. I didn't say anything about it, I just felt something wasn't right. "I'm going to the bathroom," I told her and walked in that direction. When I went into the bathroom, I closed the door, and a few seconds later, I opened and stepped back into the living room to see her trying to sneak a man out the front door. "Babe, who is that?" I asked. "This is Kim's friend," she said, referring to her sister Kim. "So what the fuck is he doing coming out the kitchen?" I asked. "And where is Kim?" "He was here waiting for Kim," she said. "That's why you took so long opening the door, hiding him," I said angrily. The guy walked out, and when she closed the door behind him, I began to question her about the beer cans, and why she was keeping him company with no clothes on, under her robe. She was butt naked under her robe, and speechless when I asked her about it. "No wonder you want to stay home. The whore in your ass wanna roam, huh?" I said. I was hurt, and I couldn't believe she was cheating on me. I thought we were in love. When I looked at her, she was no longer beautiful to me. I felt betrayed and disrespected. To be hurt by a woman was the story of my life with women thus far. Earlier that day I had made love to her, kissed all over her body, and now to think she was having sex with somebody else all the time. I went back into the bathroom to calm my nerves. As I was standing, looking in the mirror, I glanced down into the garbage and I saw 2 condom wrappers, and they weren't mine. This triggered something in me. I stormed out of the bathroom. "Whose are these?" I asked, holding the condom wrappers, showing them to her. "Kim was over here with him earlier," she said, lying through her teeth. She was disgusting to me. I was so hurt. "You not supposed to just show up over here anyway," she said to me, trying to turn the blame around on me. "I thought we had something real, Sonia," I said with hurt in my voice, clearly showing my emotions. "Demetrius, he don't mean nothing to me," she said like nothing she had done was wrong. "So you admit it, huh? He was here with you?" I asked. She just looked at me. I was so angry that I pushed her out of the way of the door, spit on her and left. I was so hurt. All I have ever wanted in my life was one woman to love and build a family with, to be in one home with all my children, to come home from work and sit down in front of the TV with my family and loving on my wife. All I have ever wanted was someone that could withstand adversities with me, someone that was willing to go through the hard times as well as the good times. I loved every woman I have ever been with who had staying power. If they made a mistake, I was willing to forgive and use that mistake as a stepping stone. But it always seemed like I had to be perfect and not make mistakes. If I made a mistake, I could not be forgiven because I was supposed to be perfect. So I was often left to hurt as if my feelings never mattered. I thought I was laying the pipe down and that no woman would cheat on me. Just the thought of me sleeping with her made me ill, and it angered me even more. What she didn't know was that I had keys to her house, and while she was out with her new boyfriend, I went into her apartment. I searched through her things carefully, so she wouldn't notice anyone had been there, and I found the title to her car that I bought her, as well as the engagement ring I gave her. I took them both and left quickly. I knew she wouldn't know I took the title to her car. The ring, yeah, but oh well, I thought. I felt somewhat vindicated, having the title and taking the ring back. "How you like me now?" I thought as I was driving back home. The next day, I had the title changed into my name. I approached her a few times while hanging out, trying to get her back into my life. I was lonely for her, and hurt so much missing her. I felt like somebody close had died in my life. I was totally depressed. She didn't care about my pain or the fact that she was a part of it. She called the police on me and had an order of protection put on me so I couldn't come near her. I looked forward to going to court. All that I wanted to do was see her paid back for the pain she caused me. Sonia resembled Robin Givens, and from her actions, she had some of her same characteristics. When the judge told me that I had to stay away from her, I asked him if I could just have my car back that I was letting her drive. She was shocked at my request. She spoke up, telling the judge that the car she had was hers. All she knew was that the car was in her name. She had no idea that I had taken the title from her house. I told the judge I had let her use the car and that now I wanted it back. "I have the title here, Your Honor," passing it to the court officer who took it to the judge to look at it. I told Sonia as we left the courtroom that I had taken the ring too. What, you didn't believe me when I told you I used to be a burglar? I said sarcastically. I had heard she had accused her sister Kim of taking the ring. I felt good about paying her back and walked away with a smirk on my face. I did notice that she was wearing her boyfriend's name, Hosea, around her neck on the gold chain I gave her. I was hurting so much over that girl. My brother Andre came from South Bend, Indiana, along with two women to comfort me, to help me get out of the depressed state of mind that I was in. I couldn't get into another woman. My heart was broken, and because I was ordered not go around Sonia, it was hard living in Wheeling, Illinois, not being able to see her, so I moved. I relocated me and my children to South Bend, Indiana. I decided to go live out there with my brother. I found another house with the help of my brother and made the same financial agreement with my new landlord as I did in Wheeling, Illinois. I gave him a year's advance payment, and my Section 8 was transferred. The house was even nicer and bigger than the one we had in Wheeling. I don't know what it was this woman had over me, but she had me going. I had to move 150 miles away from her. I had it bad. I think she put some voodoo on me or something in my food because I moped around like I had lost my best friend. Being away helped me to get over her, and I soon began to get my life back in order. South Bend, Indiana was not too much different from Wheeling other than the fact we were far away from the city. However, I found South Bend to be a very comforting place and my children loved it there. A park was right across the street, just outside the front door, so we spent a lot of time there. My children and I also went to all the festivities that went on in South Bend. My brother Andre and I didn't spend a lot of time around each other growing up because I was in prison. He went into the Navy when he was 19 and we were out of contact with each other for over 11 years. It was a blessing for me to spend time and get to know my brother, as well as him getting to know me. The last time I saw my brother, I was on tour in Virginia, and he was stationed there in Norfolk on the USS Austin. We got to see each other during my time there. Other than that, we spoke over the phone on occasions. Now we were living in the same city. I got a chance to know his wife, Tisha, and their children. On top of that, my children got a chance to meet their cousins and other family members. I lived in South Bend, Indiana for 2 years and began to get bored. I met a few women that were nice there, but things were too slow out there for me. I needed a woman in my life, but there I was stressed, cooking, cleaning, sleeping alone and raising 4 children by myself. The women I met in South Bend were all beautiful, but none of them wanted to be involved because of the children. They all liked my children, but the attention in which they required, none of them could love me and my children enough to give themselves to me. I thought that for them I had too much baggage. I didn't have time to go out to meet women and take them on dates. I had to be home after work, pick up my children from school, cook for them, feed them, bathe them, get their clothes ready for the next day, help them with homework and get them ready for bed. After all of that, I had free time for myself. I could not go out and leave my children in the house alone. The women I met wanted more attention than I could give them. It's like some men can't deal or get too involved in a relationship with a woman because she has several children. To sum it up, I was stressed and sleeping alone every night. I needed to be around the homies and friends I grew up with. I knew they would come by, cook, watch the games and play cards. These were my social buddies: Carlos, Landa, Tyrone, John, Denise, Maria, Sheila, Dee, and Cheryl, and my family. I needed to be somewhere that felt like home. We had leave on a Friday after the kids got out of school. I had visit Carlos, who at the time lived with his sister Maria. They were into church seeking the word. Maria asked me to go to church with them and I accepted. I ended up with them every weekend, driving up there, going to different churches, being guided by the word. We began having Bible study and I became really involved, traveling to visit different churches. I didn't know what it was I was looking for. All I knew was my life was busy going to church and I was finding joy in doing so. I was leading a lifestyle of becoming a Christian. We found ourselves visiting the Greater First Baptist Church in East Chicago, Indiana, with the presiding Bishop Travis L. Grant. There was something about the word he delivered. For the first time in my life, I truly felt the Spirit of the Lord within me. It was the first time I ever felt connected to the Word. It was at the Greater First Baptist Church where the spiritual power descended on me and a faith was born within me. I always had a faith and desire to know God and a need within me to be able to feel His presence. Immediately I was hooked, and like no drug I had ever experienced, I had a craving for the Word of the Lord. When Bishop Grant was preaching, it seemed as if he was talking directly to me. He told me that by the renewing of my mind, that God was now my material and spiritual source of life. I felt this. It was gratifying when I went to the altar and received prayer from the bishop before leaving church. God's got his angels covering you. The devil can tempt you, and even if and when you fall, he can't kill you. God wants to use you, he said. I needed to hear something like that. I needed to have a greater belief of purpose for my life and how God wanted to use me. I wanted to be a servant to him, other than my children, who had given me purpose. I needed to know that God had a purpose for me. I needed God, and I wanted to learn to be obedient to what God wanted me to do. I didn't know what it was he wanted me to do. All I know was I wanted to be in church to learn all I could to be closer to him. Other than that, I knew that my life was headed down a road to destruction. I needed the Lord in my life. I needed to be surrounded by good because the pain in me wanted to burst out. Lord help me, I cried out so many nights. Chapter 25. The voice within. Everything began to balance in my life again, up until the day Daryl McDavid, R. Kelly's accountant, called to tell me he wanted to see me. Even though things did not exactly end on good terms, I was happy. I missed Rob and the way things were prior to all the conflicts we had. We were like family, which makes it that much more difficult to just walk away without wishing things were different. On top of that, I needed a job. I knew Rob wanted me to come back, but I was not going to go back to work for him under the same conditions. I was not willing to give up the relationship or the security I had found with my faith in God and the joy of being able to come home to my children every day. Nonetheless, I accepted the invitation from Daryl to attend one of our Kelly's concerts at the United Center in Chicago. I was given tickets and backstage passes for me and my children, but instead of going backstage, we went straight back to my home church in East Chicago, Indiana. A couple of days later, I received another call from Daryl wanting to know why I didn't see them after the show. I told him I was with my children and I shared my newfound faith in God and how I no longer wanted to be a part of something that seemed to keep me falling backwards in life. I went on to explain that I missed the action of the business, but I was content with life without all of the melodrama. Daryl let me know that Rob missed me, and he had somewhat changed. He made me think that my faith and walk with God as a Christian could have an effect on Rob. In my heart, I wanted that to be true. I knew R. Kelly was a spiritual person and that his changed personality was caused by some demonic spirit with a plan to destroy him. As I talked to Daryl, a scripture came to my mind, Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. Daryl suggested I go see Rob, so I drove up north to the studio over in my old neighborhood by the Cabrini Green projects. When I arrived, I was met at the entrance by General, one of our Kelly's hangout buddies. He was around when I was there and was still hanging out in the lounge area of the studio, hoping for the opportunity to be produced as a rapper by R. Kelly. For now, he was still being a flunky for Rob, hanging around and running errands underpaid like most people that clung to him. He told me R. Kelly allowed him to rap and co-write the song Fiesta off the R. Kelly TP2 album. You would think that a person who co-wrote a song with the famous R. Kelly would be paid and happy. Fiesta was a hit. But General told me he was very disappointed with the way things were going for him. I told him he had to take a stand for himself, that as long as he lay around under R. Kelly, being his flunky, he wasn't going to do anything for him. He agreed with me and asked me for my phone number. He said he had some things he wanted to talk to me about. After I gave him my number, I went up to the studio where Rob was. When I walked in the studio, R. Kelly was sitting back on the sofa with a young lady in between his legs. She was giving him head. I was disturbed by what I saw, so I told him I'd wait out in the hall while he got himself together. Hold on, he said, stopping the girl and giving her instructions to wait in another part of the studio. Man, what's up, boy? He asked, getting up from the couch to give me a hug. Nothing, just come to check you out, man. I see you still busy with the ladies, I responded. Damn, dog, you still look the same, he said. You too, except for that hair you tryna grow, I said, rubbing my cheek, indicating the smooth-cut beard and goatee he had grown. Yeah, man, so what you doing these days, man? I miss you, he said. I miss you too, Rob, I said, nodding my head in agreement. I'm staying at a church in East Chicago, Indiana. I got saved, man. I'm trying to turn my life completely around, I told him. That's good, man. That's really good, he said, and then added, I've been doing some gospel writing myself. Hey, Peter, pull up, you saved me, he yelled to the engineer Peter Mockran over the intercom, who was in another room. It was a gospel song. How ironic, I thought as I listened to the lyrics. God was truly moving to join us together again, I thought. After listening, we began to talk about me coming back on board. I was persistent in making him understand that things had to be different. I told him how I was in his corner and had his best interest at heart. He then told me that I have to start over and work my way back up again. So I told him I would think about it. In the meantime, he just wanted me to hang out with him. I couldn't see myself just hanging out. I only wanted to be a part of the business this time. I wanted everything I did to have meaning and purpose. If this was meant to be, then this would work, I thought. How ironic it was that a few weeks before I met up with Rob, I met a white girl named Shannon that had a voice out this world. In this day and time I would have compared her to Christina Aguilera. I told Robert about her and the fact that I wanted to manage her. I asked him if he would produce her for me. The first thing he asked was how old she was. He said he couldn't work with any girls under the age of 18 anymore, and said he didn't know who to trust. Demetrius, I feel like girls are being planted on me, he said. I assured him that Shannon was 19, so he agreed to meet with her. The next day I returned to the studio with Shannon. She was overly excited to meet R. Kelly. On the way there, I made it clear that the only way we were going to get any production out of R. Kelly was for her to follow my lead in dealing with him. When she auditioned, Rob saw that she had talent and was a cute white girl with a soulful voice. He agreed to work with her under my management. When it was time to leave, he wanted her to stay at the studio with him. He said he had some tracks he was going to let her sing. I told him we'd continue the next day, but Shannon interrupted me, agreeing to stay. Right then, I was pissed with her because I knew R. Kelly was going to lock her in one of the studio rooms and keep her hostage, promising her this and that. And that's exactly what he did. A few weeks passed, and nothing was becoming of Shannon's recording. He had her singing with some other girls, but the real deal was he was fucking her and she had stopped listening to me. She wasn't allowed to go anywhere unless it was with him. So after about a month of the same old thing, she was ready to come back with me. During this time, General decided to leave R. Kelly. He called me and said that he took my advice to do things on his own. He told me that he spoke to Barry Hankerson. Although Barry hadn't heard of him before the call, he asked General for my number and mentioned that he wanted to talk to me. I didn't know why. I hadn't talked to Barry for over 2 years. All I knew was that he and R. Kelly were going through something and they were cutting their business ties. I found that out because Rob let me read a letter he had written up for Barry Hankerson. He said Cheryl Cobb wrote the letter for him. The letter was announcing Rob's request to terminate Barry as his manager. Johnny man, I need you with me, especially dealing with Barry, he said. Rob, you just gotta pay me man. Like you said, who you gon' share all that money you got with? I said, looking him dead in the eyes and not a freckle of a smile on my face. I was serious about wanting to work for Rob. I still believed the best of Robert was still yet to come. This kid needed somebody with him who loved him and was not afraid to tell him the truth. He needed a true right-hand man and not a yes man. I wanted that position with him, but I also had partiality for Barry too. Personally, I always felt Robert should have apologized to Barry for disrespecting him and his family by being intimate with their little girl, Aaliyah. Nonetheless, that was their business. I didn't want any part of their feud. I just wanted a job. I was living in an 8-bedroom home connected to the church I belonged to with my children, and all I wanted to do was make a better life for them and keep the joyous feeling I had in praising the Lord. I thought if God wasn't going to have the glory for my association with R. Kelly, then working with him was not what I wanted to do. Shannon ended up living in the studio, literally living there, daily. I would go to check on her and I'd end up hanging out with Rob. One particular day, Rob took me to a fitness gym called East Bank Club on Kinsey and Hubbard in downtown Chicago. This experience was something totally weird and an experience I will never forget. I wanted to believe God was the reason for my continued association with Rob, but this experience had me confused with who was really the head in this journey I was on. Rob met with a trainer there and worked out. After the workout, we went to meet with a couple of his female friends in the restaurant area of the facility. I sat at a separate table, as if I was his security, sipping on a cranberry juice, while Rob sat at a table right across from me entertaining his lady friends. I kept noticing Rob staring at me as if I was doing something wrong. I was thinking to myself, what's wrong with this dude? I hope he don't think I'm flirting with them girls. Even though one of them kept turning around smiling at me, I paid her no mind. I said to myself, if he starts tripping about these girls, I'm out of here. I just was not dealing with his egotistical, pompous attitude. I wanted to be able to share happiness and not be caught up in senseless drama. After a few moments with him staring back and forth at me, he all of a sudden jumped up from his table and motioned for me to follow him. I did. I got up and walked behind him, wondering to myself what's on his mind. I followed him to the men's bathroom. This was where we were going to end things if he mentioned anything about me and them girls. I didn't know what was on his mind. There were no girls or mischief on my mind. My life was for God's glory. When we got into the bathroom, I asked, "What's up, Rob?" He had a serious look on his face, as if something heavy was on his mind. Soon as the bathroom door closed, he turned to me. "Johnny man, I feel the Spirit of the Lord on me," he said with a crying, remorseful voice. "Praise the Lord," I said. I instantly thought that God had intervened into our lives and something miraculous was about to start happening. I was so happy that the Spirit of the Lord came on my heart as well. I began praising God in the bathroom, and then we both began to speak in tongues. I was surprised at this. Kelly was so fluent with his speaking. I was still a baby, just experiencing this newfound greatness I was feeling. As I was dancing and praising, Rob was doing the same, but he was slowly drifting and dancing his way into the stalls, still speaking in tongues. Then all of a sudden, his voice changed and no longer sounded like his voice. He started sounding demonic, as if another voice had taken him over and began speaking through him. The stall door closed and I started hearing this voice. It was similar to a voice you would hear in a demonic movie where a spirit overtakes you, like in the movie Exorcist, when the demon took over the girl's body and started speaking through her. I couldn't understand a word. Bichesbilig, shun moko das ala tame shala. This voice continued for several minutes. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I became fearful, to be honest with you. At that moment, I began to plead the blood of Jesus, asking the Lord to protect me. Let no weapon formed against me prosper. The spiritual encounter we had in that men's bathroom went for 40 to 45 minutes, and even though we were in the only bathroom of a crowded facility, no one came in the bathroom. When it was over, we came out and walked straight back to our seats as if nothing ever happened. I felt strange and wanted to understand, but Robert didn't want to talk about it. I didn't know what I was dealing with. This was on the top of my list of spiritual experiences. I didn't know if it was the Holy Spirit speaking through Rob or the devil. I was in a confused state of mind after witnessing what I had just gone through. After we left the restaurant, he still did not want to talk about it. He felt like the Holy Spirit that was on him before going into the bathroom was just a moment that he felt he had to praise God. It was a deep moment for me though. I wouldn't let it go that easy. "Rob man, I didn't know you spoke in tongues like that," I said to him. "I know the Lord," Rob said. He turned the music up in the car to drown out our conversation. It puzzled me because now I was wondering if this was in any way connected with a demonic group I heard of, the Illuminati. He disregarded the situation, but it left me in wonder as well as slight fear of the unrecognizable voice. Had this man indeed sold his soul to the devil for mere stardom? That evening when I got home, I went to speak with my bishop, Bishop Travis L. Grant. He took me to 1 Corinthians chapter 14. He would not come straight out and tell me that I had come into contact with an evil spirit because he hadn't witnessed it himself, but from what I had explained to him, he said it was possible that I had come in contact with a strong demon. I believed him because that was the weirdest spiritual thing I ever witnessed. From that moment on, I knew that demons did exist. I looked at Robert in a whole new light. After that day in the bathroom, things began to change for me with women. I began to have strong desires to have sex with every woman I saw. The women began to make sexual gestures and come on to me. I was leaving choir rehearsal and taking the members of my church to my house, which was adjacent to the church, to have sex with them. It was all so easy. It was like the women had the same spirit on them. They were seeking me out. My presence became a controversy within the church. The bishop called me into his office one day and asked me what was going on with me and several members. I didn't lie. I told him that I was having sex with some of them. Wherever I went, I was flirting or being flirted with. I began to believe that Kelly's sex demon had entered me in that bathroom. The oversexed attitude started the evening I left the restaurant. Things were changing. My spirituality was being tested, and I was losing the battle. I wanted to have sex with every woman I came in contact with. That wasn't me. General told me he gave Barry my number, but I wasn't expecting him to really call me. For what was my thought? "Demetrius, what's happening, man? I've been trying to reach you, boy. How have you been?" Barry asked, sounding happy that he was able to reach me. "I'm fine, B. What's happening with you?" I asked. "You working?" he asked. "No man, I'm living in a church home, trying to get my life right," I responded. "Living in a church?" he said. "Why haven't you called me? If you were going through something, you can always call me, you know that," he said. "Well, I've just been trying to get my life right, Barry," I said. "Well, I got work for you. You don't have to live in a church." "And how are the kids?" he asked. Barry showed signs of true compassion towards my living situation. He informed me that General gave him my number, and he mentioned that General told him that he had something he wanted him to see. Both Barry and I wanted to investigate whatever it was General was talking about. "But first, before you do anything, come down here to New York. Let me show you around the office, meet some people, and let me get you started working for Blackground. What I've got for you to do, you can do from home, he said. That information aroused my curiosity. That next day, I was on a plane to New York round-trip ticket, and with a room paid for by Barry Hankerson and Blackground Enterprises. Change was once again occurring in my life. The life I thought I had put behind me was resurfacing. When I got to New York, Barry put me at the Empire Hotel, a place and area I was familiar with from my travel back and forth to New York with R. Kelly. Barry had a car pick me up at the hotel, take me to his office at 155 19th Street. Barry was really happy to see me, and I was happy to see him also. He took me around to see everyone who worked for his record company. The position he offered me was director of promotions. I was to be in charge of getting urban radio stations to play Blackground Enterprises artists' songs. He gave me a list of every radio station's directory. My job was to call them and get them to play Aaliyah and Tank. I was excited about this job. It was a real job and I could work it from home with the record company, paying the phone bill. Barry offered me $40,000 a year, and when I would have to travel to different cities, my expenses would be paid by the company. I accepted the job. It required me to talk and be persuasive, which was second nature to me. I stayed with Barry, visiting his office for 2 days. When I got back to Chicago, I had an $800 check with me. I had been paid for the first week in advance. It had been a while since I had money. I was so excited that I went to work on the phone right away. Barry shipped cases of Tank's album to me, so I began to call directors of radio stations in the South. After talking to several directors, I had to send them a copy of Tank's CD. I had a gift of gab already from way back when I was working with Clifford, so to be personable with people, to make them like me and to make them laugh was somewhat easy for me. Within the first week, I found myself making friends over the phone and being invited to attend different radio station functions from Georgia to North Carolina. Barry began to get calls about me with people requesting that I attend their parties. I was definitely making an impression on the people I was in contact with. I was able to get a few of the stations to add Tank on their playlist. I thought I was doing what Barry wanted me to do, but Barry told me to slow down. He wasn't ready for me to start flying here and there just yet. So basically, I mailed CDS out and gave the CDS a chance to reach its destination before making any follow-up calls. As the weeks passed, Barry sent my checks to me by FedEx on time, every Friday morning. During this time, R. Kelly was pursuing me also. I told him that I was considering working for Barry, which really angered him. I asked him if he was ready to put me on the payroll. Once again, he told me I'd have to hang around and work my way back up. I have to live, Rob. I have to take care of my family, I told him. When I asked how much he was going to pay me to hang around, he told me he'd pay me $300 a week. But I can't have you with me if you're working for Barry, he said. I told him $300 wouldn't be enough for me, and that's when he mentioned Shannon. Yo girl, man, I really won't be able to work with her. She really ain't got what it takes. I knew that was bullshit. Shannon apologized for not listening to me, but it was all good. I liked Shannon, so I figured I would just introduce her to Barry. Since Shannon had been staying in one of the corner rooms of the studio, she had nowhere to stay, so she went back home with me. I was uncomfortable with her being there with me, and I was uneasy about what people in the church would think about me having a young white girl staying with me. So I kept her on the down low for a couple of days, and then took her back to South Bend. General was calling me a lot more now that I was with Barry. He wanted a record deal and was angry with R. Kelly. He asked me if I could keep a secret, and when I told him I could, he told me he acquired some of Rob's personal tapes and he wanted to sell them. It was a fact that R. Kelly's gym bag was recently stolen from him at a gym on the west side. Inside the bag were supposed to be some personal tapes of R. Kelly and a diamond necklace worth $10K or more. Rob had a reward out for that bag, and he asked me to keep an eye and ear open for information regarding it. Up until then, I hadn't heard or seen anything regarding the bag or the tapes. The first person General wanted to contact and show the tapes to was Barry. He asked me if I could set it up for him to meet with Barry. I told him I'd give Barry a call, and I did. Barry was not really interested in the tapes. He told me to keep my focus on the job and to beware of General as well as R. Kelly. He told me he was trying to help me get my life straight and that I didn't need to involve myself in anybody else's drama. A week passed and I hadn't heard from Barry. One night he called me after 10:30 p.m. telling me he had received a letter from Robert and his attorneys saying Rob no longer wanted him as his manager. Barry felt disrespected by R. Kelly. To Barry, R. Kelly was a piece of shit. He owed him a lot of money and was refusing to pay. This betrayal piqued his interest in wanting to know what was on the tapes. Barry then asked me to meet with General to view the tapes. When I called General, he informed me that he was home in Philly, so Barry flew me out there. General met me at the hotel I stayed in. Of course he didn't come alone. He was accompanied by two other guys who stood while we viewed the tapes as if they were there as his security. Before letting me view the tapes, he told me this was not a joke. The people behind him are playing for keeps, so I better be looking out for myself. The tapes were of different sexual encounters that R. Kelly had with several girls. Please note this was not the tape with R. Kelly urinating on that little girl he went to trial for. Most of these girls seemed to be mature adults. However, General didn't show me all the tapes he had. I asked General what he wanted, and he told me that he wanted a record deal and some cash. I also have some other tapes, but I want to wait to show those to Barry if he decides to meet with me. If not, then I have some other people that are interested in putting these tapes out, he said. The tapes I saw were nonetheless incriminating, and would indeed damage R. Kelly's reputation. Most of the women on the tapes were of adult women, but there were two on there that did look like they were very young girls. This bothered me for some reason. I felt a bit of pain for R. Kelly and a need to help him. I spoke to Barry once General left my hotel room. I told him what was on the tapes, and after we talked, he said he'd give General a call himself. I flew back home that night. I thought if only Rob had me with him and had treated me right, none of this would be happening. I protected him. I had his back. Now these other people he let in, they were snakes out to destroy him. Once I arrived in Chicago and got into my car, I decided to drive over to the studio in hopes that Rob was there, and he was. What's happening, Demetrius? He asked. What brings you out? I didn't waste time with him beating around the bush. Rob, somebody out to hurt you, I told him. What are you talking about? He asked. I saw the tapes, I told him. Who's got M? He asked. I can't tell you that, Rob, cause it would endanger me. All I know is we can get M. Even if you have to buy them back, you need to get them, I told him. You need to tell me who got them. Either you're with me or against me, Demetrius. I need to get them, and if you can't tell me, then you need to leave, he said. I'm not about to be extorted by nobody. He went on to say. Who got them? He asked again. Rob, I can't tell you that. Every time in the past I have turned some information over to you, you had set me up, leaving me to be the fall guy. I can't do it in this case. There are some very dangerous people in possession of your tapes, man, and I'm not going to set myself up to be hurt. General gave me some names of some of notorious people that were also interested in the tapes. I didn't feel Rob would have my back, and because I would not expose who had the tapes, Rob told me he would look at me as his enemy, along with Barry. Finally, I left, and I felt good about what I did to warn Robert. It was all I could do. I wished he would have thought about how in the past, I had always been upfront with him and how I always did what was needed to protect him. As I was driving, I thought to myself how Rob felt he and his money could get him out of anything. I left it at that. I was ready to get back to my life. I didn't want anything to do with the tapes or assisting Barry to get the tapes from General any longer. I just wanted to work the job Barry gave me. I was somewhat disappointed, though, because although I had hopes of being back in association with Rob, I realized that it was not God's will. It was clear to me, as I was driving home, who I was going to be working for. Rob was no longer someone I was going to concern myself with any longer. The job Barry had me doing was a new beginning for me. That job, and that job only, was good for me as far as I was concerned. Barry and whoever else wanted the tapes that were stolen from Rob were going to have to leave me out of that part of their business. That night, when I got home, General called. He had a young lady on the line with him. Demetrius, I got this girl on the line with us. I told her how you assisted Tia with getting an attorney, and she wants you to help her, and she's willing to pay you too, he said. I immediately told him I didn't want any part of it. I asked him why he was so stuck on bringing Rob down. He said he just thought I would be interested in making some real money. No, I don't want any part of any of it, the tape or nothing else, I said. As far as the tapes are concerned, we won't discuss that, he said, seeming a bit nervous that I mentioned it with the girl being on the phone. When I told them I had to get off the phone, the young lady spoke for the first time to ask me if I could refer her to an attorney. No, young lady, I don't know of anybody. General asked me if I knew the name of the attorney Tia used. I insisted at that time that I had to go. I wished the young lady good luck in her pursuit to find a lawyer, and said my goodbyes. General asked if he could call me back after he had finished with whoever the girl was he had on the line with us. Said he had to speak to me about something personal. It was an hour later when he called me. I was just about to fall asleep when the phone rang. Man, Barry trippin', he said. He said that Barry wasn't interested in the tapes. He went on to mention that some of his own people had set up a meeting for him in LA with someone that was interested in the tapes. He asked me if I wanted to go along with him and offered me 10% of whatever he would get off the tapes. I asked him how much he was asking, and he told me $50,000 for each tape he had. I'm not going to lie. I thought about taking him up on his offer, but I decided to pass. I turned over and looked at my daughter lying in the bed in a peaceful sleep. It confirmed that I was content working for Barry and receiving the $800 a week I was getting. The next day, I spoke to Barry and told him about the girl General had on the phone. When he called me, Barry advised me to stay out of it as he himself said he didn't want anything to do with the tapes that General was trying to sell him. After that, Barry and I were on the phone with each other every day. I kind of felt he was a bit obsessed with Rob because he was all we talked about. We talked about the old days and what we thought could have been done to make things turn out better. Barry knew as I did that Rob was alone. The people that were around him in the beginning weren't there anymore, and he didn't really know the new people he had working for him. Barry and I both felt most of them were flunkies and yes men. We knew that Kelly's problems were just beginning. Barry was sounding a lot like me, hoping that Robert would reach out, apologize and allow all of us to pick up where we left off, taking his musical career to the next level. It was just wishful thinking. Barry's love for Rob was mixed with the pain that was caused when he messed with Aaliyah. Rob would never admit that he was wrong concerning Aaliyah. He stood by the choices he made and the way he treated the people that cared about him most. I took Barry's advice not to call General anymore, but he still called me, giving me updates on the progress he was making with selling the videos. He also told me that the girl he had on the phone for a referral to a lawyer found one in Chicago and they were coming to the Kai to meet with her. He asked me to talk to Barry to arrange an audition for him. General still wanted a record deal. Chapter 26. The setup/LA bound. Working as a director of promotions was still bringing in a weekly paycheck and I really wasn't doing a lot of work. I was on the phone with Barry every day. As I said, he was obsessed with Robert and I somewhat felt like I could get them together. I felt they both needed to be face to face in the same room with one another. When I would suggest it to either of them, they both had negative things to say about each other. I saw through their facade and knew that they both had a love for each other, but pride wouldn't allow either of them to humble themselves to gain unity. Once, while Barry and I were on the phone, the young lady from Miami called. She was the one General had asked to call me. She told me she was in Chicago to meet with an attorney and she was at the Conrad Hilton Hotel in downtown Chicago. I put her on hold and clicked over to tell Barry that she invited me to the hotel to have dinner with her and her aunt. I asked Barry what he thought, and he told me to go see what they were up to, but to be careful not to say anything to them that would incriminate me as being part of any scheme. Barry was like me when it came to Kelly. If we knew something was going on that may cause him trouble, he wanted to be on top of it. Barry always gave me the impression that in spite of what they were going through, if Rob would just ask, Barry would, without hesitation, come to his aid. I accepted the young lady's invitation and told them I'd be right down. When I arrived to her room in the Conrad Hilton, which is an expensive hotel, being that it was right in the heart of downtown Chicago, I was uneasy and wondered how this young girl could afford to stay at this hotel. Nonetheless, when she came to the door, I was invited in and introduced to her aunt who was lying on one of the double beds. Her name didn't register because my mind was scoping out my surroundings. Her aunt started to question me about what I wanted for helping her niece. I actually haven't done anything to help your niece and I don't want anything. This is all her doing, I told her, pointing to her niece. I came down for the free meal and to meet this gorgeous aunt that she told me about. I responded in a flirtatious way. Her aunt didn't move much from the position she was laying in when I walked in the room. Right when I was about to sit down, there was a knock on the door. I was somewhat startled. Just relax, the aunt said as she finally got up from the bed to answer the door. We ordered food just before you came, she said, opening the door. When she opened the door, a big bald-headed white guy came in, holding a badge out. Demetrius, just relax. My name is Jack Palladino. I'm a detective, and we've got you for trying to persuade this young lady to bring false charges against Kelly. What? I asked. I was shocked and scared at the same time. I didn't feel like I did anything wrong and I wanted nothing to do with the law and being arrested. Just relax, Demetrius, Palladino said again as he began to sit across from me. We don't want you, Demetrius, he said, even though I can bring up several charges against you, with you looking at least doing 5 years in Statesville with your record. We want Barry Hankerson. At that point, I just sat back and listened, looking around calmly for the opportunity to escape. I figured the way he came in, if he was a detective, I was set up, and I was waiting and looking for the backup police to come in. We know that Barry Hankerson is behind this, by manipulating you to turn this girl against R. Kelly, and we know that you and him are in possession of some missing tapes. Mr. Kelly told me to tell you that if you work with us, we'll compensate you. In my mind, I thought, Rob crossed me again. Think about it for a minute, Demetrius, before you answer, because, as of right now, you're going down and you're looking at about 5 years. Palladino sat back trying to be cool as if he had gotten through to me. I must admit, sitting there with the thought of going to jail and serving 5 years had me shaky, but when I didn't see any other Chicago police arriving, I began to think of a way to get out of that room. I need to talk to my pastor, I said. I ain't did nothing wrong, I said. I got from my seat and went to the telephone. I'm calling my pastor. He knows about all of this, I said, and picked up the phone. I dialed a 1-800 number that gave me a direct line to call out so that the number that I had dialed would not register to the hotel room. I did not want them to know that I called Barry. He was expecting my call because he told me to call him and let him know what was going on with this girl. He answered the phone. Bishop Grant, I said, pretending I was talking to my pastor. They got me in a room, saying I'm under arrest for trying to set R. Kelly up. Are they right there with you? Barry asked. Yes, sir, I said, and then I whispered into the phone, letting Barry know that I was using a toll-free 1-800 number so they can't trace the call. Yeah, well, you need to get out of there. If there aren't any other police officers there, just leave. He can't stop you. He has no authority to put his hands on you. You haven't done anything wrong. Just don't talk to him about anything and call me when you get to a free line, Barry said. All right, I said, and hung up. I got off the phone and became belligerent, walking toward the door to leave. I'm not getting ready to sit here and allow you to threaten me, and I ain't done nothing wrong. Y'all trying to set me up. I'm leaving. If you're a police officer, where is your backup? I asked him, hunching my shoulders to indicate to him I was ready to get physical. I don't know you and I ain't standing here and letting you intimidate me, I said. I was hoping that this dude didn't reach out to grab at me as I made my way to the door, wondering to myself, what the hell have I gotten myself into again? Damn it, I thought, fucking with Robert Kelly. Palladino began to move at me toward the door as if he was about to try and stop me. You better not put your fucking hands on me, man, cause I will be going to jail for fucking your ass up if you put your hands on me, I told him, and I was serious. My spirituality had been compromised. All I wanted to do was get out of that room and get back home. I walked out the door and Palladino followed close behind. You're not going to get away, Demetrius. If I was you, I'd cooperate because I can have you arrested right now, he said. Well, you ain't me, motherfucker, I told him, and I left. As I stepped into the hallway, I was looking for his backup police officers, and there were none. Palladino was behind me and got on the elevator with me. I didn't say shit to him and wasn't hearing shit he was saying. My mind was thinking, when this elevator stops, if ain't no police in the lobby, dude would have to step up off following me. When I got downstairs, there were still no police around. I turned to the dude. Palladino, that is, man, you need to get away from me. If you were going to arrest me, I'd be cuffed by now. So you need to get up off me, man, and stop following me, I told him as I began walking toward the exit. Palladino looked the opposite direction, waving toward the main lobby of the hotel and yelling for house security. While he was looking for backup, I quickened my steps. As soon as I got outdoor and turned a corner, I broke and ran to my car. I was safe now. He wasn't going to catch me, not tonight, that is. Lock me up. I didn't think so, at least not then. I was happy and nervous at the same time. When I got to my car, I felt the adrenaline rush from being a free man. Just moments ago, my freedom had been threatened. I had gone to Rob like a man, with his best interest at heart, warning him that someone was out to hurt him, and this punk wanna put a private detective on me to try to set me up. Some real Perry Mason punk ass shit. Driving home, I thought about General. I was trying to figure out how he was involved. This dude had tapes on Rob. But I wondered, why would he put this girl on me like that? Maybe he didn't have more than one tape. Maybe he was using the one he showed me so he could pull me into Rob's web and set Barry up. I thought about Barry's words of how he felt like Rob was a low-down piece of shit, and I was saddened because I felt the same way. He tried to set me up instead of coming to me as a man, as a friend, and as a brother. I always showed that type of love for him. This dude was out of pocket. He had sent a private investigator at me and threatened to take me away from my children. I was angry at Rob and at General. When I got back home to the convent, I parked my car a block away and walked to my house. I figured if the police or anyone came looking for me, I could get out of the house without them seeing me and get safely to my car. I wasn't going to jail, that was out of the question. I wondered why God brought these people back into my life to cause me trouble. My life was going well. I didn't have money, but I was building a life of promise by being in the church. In the short period of time I had connected back with R. Kelly, I had come into contact with his sex demon. Now I was a whoremonger, and on top of that, I was about to become an outlaw, a possible fugitive on the run. The very thought of going to jail and leaving my children made me ready to do a James Cagney on a motherfucker. Even though I hadn't done anything, I wasn't going down without a fight. When I got into the house, I called Barry. B, what's happening, man? You tell me. Where are you at? He asked. I'm at home. I left that hotel as soon as I got off the phone with you. I told him. So what happened? What was all that about? He asked. I told him what transpired throughout that short period of time. I told him that I felt General and R. Kelly tried setting me up in an effort to get me to join sides with them by accusing him, Barry, of being the mastermind of any and all wrongful acts that were in R. Kelly's way. What? Barry said, surprised. What are you talking about again? He asked, as if he didn't understand me. Yeah, B, that dude Palladino told me they knew you were behind R. Kelly's missing tapes, and you were manipulating me to persuade the girl General brought to me to file charges on R. Kelly. Demetrius, you're kidding, right? Barry asked. Nah, B, Palladino told me I was looking at 5 years and that they were going to prosecute me. Well, you need to get away from there for a few days. Come up here and let me get you an attorney to get them to look into this from a legal point to get them off you. What's wrong with Rob, man? Barry asked me. I don't know, B. I just don't want any drama. I just want to work and be able to support my children, B. I thought I had walked away from this drama and now they're pulling me right back in again, I said jokingly. Yeah, well, you need to get on up here until we straighten this out. When can you get here? He asked. Well, I've got to get my sister to come babysit, and I'm gonna need some money to take care of her, I said. I'll get my secretary to call you with your flight information for tomorrow evening. What's your sister's name? He asked. I'll wire her some money to keep the kids for you. Get in contact with me if you need anything before then. And call that boy General and see what he has to say about this, and I'll talk to you later, he said before he hung up. I was fortunate to have Barry Hankerson on my side. Funny how God puts things in place. When we don't think there's a way out, He's already provided for us in advance. I wanted to do the right thing in God's eyes concerning the decisions I was making with going to LA and in dealing with R. Kelly. My true thoughts were to cut my ties with Rob. I just wanted to be able to be at home raising my children. After I got off the phone, I called General. He was astounded when I told him of what I had gone through with the young lady he gave my number to. You bullshitting, that funky ass little bitch was planted on us, man, were his words. I told him that I felt he was a part of the plot. If I was part of setting you up, then why would I have these tapes, he asked me. General swore he wasn't part of any plot to bring Barry or myself down. He told me that he was going to be in LA the coming week to meet with some people that were supposed to purchase the tapes he had. General offered to give me a little of the money he would make off the sale to assure me that he was not part of the incident with the girl and Jack Palladino. The idea to receive some cash sounded appealing to me. I wasn't going to turn down any free money. If he was just going to give, then for sure I would take it. Thank you. In reality, though, my plan for being in LA was to see if it was possible to establish a foundation and a relationship for me and with my children. If everybody around me was hustling and taking money from each other, then that was their business. But for anyone to assume me to be guilty by association is not fair. I wanted to begin to separate myself from bonds which held me to the past. I did not want to continue to be in association with Robert, Barry, and any and everything that was coming with them. For now, I was going to go along and see if I could make my ride smooth. It had been too many years and it has just not been conducive for me. I was leery of association. I was a victim in knowing there was no truth in these cats. Yeah, things would roll for a minute, but man, I was tired of holding onto a rope. With them, everything kept changing. It was like, Rob was a relative of Murphy's Law. With him, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. I wanted something solid for once in my life. Oh yeah, it would have been lovely, but that ride was over. As I was sitting in the terminal waiting to board my plane, I read my Bible. I wanted to keep focused. I felt better than I had ever felt being into church and a babe in Christ. I didn't want to go to LA and lose that feeling of joy that was a part of my life now. As I read, I would flip open a page and the scripture which appeared in front of me would say something that seemed to always refer to what I was going through in my life or related to an answer I was in need of. Chronicles 20:15 says, "Do not be afraid nor dismayed because of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's." When I would receive comforting words, such as those, I felt my path was being guided by the Holy Spirit. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't a saint. I still had shortcomings that I was dealing with, but I was serious with the delight I was walking in and my efforts to live a righteous life. Somehow, I believed my travel was all a part of God's plan for me. I felt I was blessed. My belief was all I had, and it felt better than anything I had ever had or even been a part of. There was no doubt in my mind, in my direction, as I read Psalms 37:23-24. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, as he delights in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. I was being held. It was time to board the flight. As I stood in line, I recognized an old schoolmate. We had gone to Columbia together. Her name was Sandra, and we used to hang out between classes. She wasn't a girlfriend or anything like that. When I boarded the plane, she was already seated in the window seat on the right side of the plane. Once everyone was settled, I went to say hi to her. When she saw me, she remembered who I was. We talked briefly while I was standing in the aisle. The person who shared a seat with her asked me if I wanted to change seats. It was not just that he saw that we were old acquaintances, but Favor had me by the hand. When I sat down with her, I noticed she had her Bible. Immediately we had a common interest and our conversation went right into the Word. Once we started sharing in the joy of the Lord, the plane took off. We were so engrossed in our conversation of how God was moving in our lives that when we looked up to pay attention to the pilot's announcement, we were landing in LA. It was a 4-hour flight, which for us seemed like only an hour. Barry had a car waiting for me. When I arrived in LA, I offered Sandra a ride, not knowing at all where she lived. It was also ironic because I was going to the Rose Garden Hotel in Hollywood, and she lived on Highland in Hollywood as well. What a coincidence, I thought. We exchanged numbers before she got out of the car, and I agreed to meet her that Wednesday to attend a Bible study with her. There was no doubt in my mind, God had a hand in the direction I was headed. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose." The next day, I got in contact with Barry. He arranged for me to pick up a car. He was scheduled to leave to go to New York the following day. I was given directions to his office in Sherman Oaks, where he left a check for me to pick up. There I was in Los Angeles, California, cruising the streets in a 2000 convertible Camaro. I had been to LA several times but never wanted to be there for any length of time because of the fear I had of earthquakes. I was in LA in '94 during an earthquake, and I always said I would never live there, but there I was. I called Sandra and she and I hooked up and went to her friend's church, and then we went to church at Faithful Central in Inglewood. We did that for several weeks, going from church to church until we got to the City of Refuge where Bishop Noel Jones preached. When I heard him preach, I felt connected to his way of teaching. I knew right away his church was to be my church home while in LA. I attended his church every Wednesday, Thursday, and Sunday. When Barry returned, he asked me if I wanted to stay, and he offered to help me get started. Next thing I knew, Daryl McDavid left a message for me at my hotel stating that he wanted to speak with me. How in the fuck did he know where I was? I wondered. I was freaked out. When I talked to Barry about it, he sent me to meet with his attorney, Ricky Ivy, in downtown Los Angeles. He sat and listened as I explained what happened in Chicago with Jack Palladino. Subsequently, he sent a letter to R. Kelly's attorney demanding that he cease for harassing me. After 2 weeks in LA, it was clear for me to go home, but I chose to stay. I sent for my children, and for the first few weeks we lived in a hotel in Hollywood. Once I found an apartment, I flew back to Chicago alone. I packed my furniture, loaded it on a U-Haul truck, and drove alone back to LA. My children and I moved into a condo in Inglewood. Once we moved in and got settled, I met a lady named Lena who worked at JCPenney at the Fox Hill Mall. She became my children's babysitter while I attended school at the United Education Institute for Business Administration. After graduating from the school, I was hired by the school as an admissions representative with a salary starting at $37,000 a year. I no longer had any desires to work in the music industry. It was gratifying for me to be able to go to work doing something I liked and come home to my children every day. We were a happy family. We missed home, but we went everywhere and were having fun, going to Universal Studios, Great America, to the beaches, and to church. We joined the City of Refuge Church. Chapter 27. Cunning Ways. Life was going well, but then I got a call from General. He was in LA. He invited me to where he was staying. He was not far from the Crenshaw Mall. I hadn't seen dude in a while. He had been doing some networking with that videotape of Robert he had. Shit, I figured that General should be a little bit moneyed up. He was staying in a nice little 2-bedroom condo. He looked relaxed and laid back. The first thing I questioned him on was the status on the videotape he had been circulating. He was anxious to show me the tape. He led me to a back room to view it. When it came on, it was not the tape I had seen before. This was a different tape. Actually, there were several tapes that had been put together. The one I was looking at was of R. Kelly pissing on a little girl. Once I recognized both of them, R. Kelly and the little girl, I chose not to watch the tape. I was sorry to see Robert making the adjustments to the camera he was recording himself on. And the girl, I forget her name, but I remember standing and talking with her at the I Wish remix video shoot. She had grown up filling out and looking like a woman, that is. But she was still a young girl. That tape was made at his home on George Street. I recognized the room in his basement and the room decorations on the tape. I was the one who picked that place out for him to live in when he was looking for property to buy. On top of that, I was with Robert for 13 years. Knowing that it was Robert Kelly on that tape, I felt somewhat let down. After viewing the tape, General told me that the tapes were being sold all around the country. He opened a closet to show me boxes and boxes of tapes. There were copies packaged for distribution. He said that people were out on the streets throughout the country selling them. I was sad for Rob. I didn't feel he deserved that. But he was the one that made the tape. I had a clear conscience that I had nothing to do with it. I actually tried to stop it. When General initially informed me that he was in town, he said it was because he was there to record with Barry. He wanted me to manage him, but I told him I was out of the business. I was happy working an 8-hour job and going home to my children every day. I left there without a tape in my hand. General said that his money was due to arrive and he would get with me. I didn't trip on it. On occasion, General would stop by my house in Inglewood, pursuing me to be his manager. He felt Barry would help his music career move if I was a part of it with him, but being in the music business was something I had no interest in at the time. Going out teaching my sons how to play basketball and baseball, taking them to vocal lessons, and picking my daughter up from dance school was all more intriguing to me. Listening to them quote books and verses of the Bible and watching them grow was what I had passion for. One day Barry stopped by the school where I worked and mentioned how impressed he was with the changes I made in my life for me and my children. Everything was going well for me in my life. I had not heard anything from R. Kelly, but Barry and I were staying in touch with each other, but it was just out of concern and friendship. Then one day Rob called me. I was so surprised to hear from him. My reaction was like that of a person awaiting a ransom call. You know, I got jumpy nervous, but at the same time, I had to be cool. When I answered the phone, I almost didn't recognize his voice. "Hello," I said. "Demetrius," the voice said, sounding as though they were crying. "Rob, what's wrong, man?" I asked with a tone of urgency. I was taken back to times I was there with him and ready to stand by his side. But I was 2,000 miles away, and that reality set right in when I asked him, "What you need, Rob? What can I get you?" I knew the porno tape of him and the young girl he urinated on while having sex with her had been circulating throughout the country. "I'm an outlaw, man. I need you to come up here," he said. "Rob, what can I do?" I asked. I truly wished it was something I could have done for him, but there wasn't. He went on to say, "Get with Daryl, man. He'll take care of what you need to get here." I was living in Inglewood, and I wondered how he had gotten my phone number. "Rob, I can't come up there." "What is it? Talk to me, Rob," I asked. I knew how R. Kelly was and how he acted. The strain he was trying to portray to me over the phone wasn't getting to me. "Man, I need you to get with Daryl," he said again, sounding as if he was crying. I shouted into the phone, hoping to get through to him to talk to me and stop whining. Rob, man, talk to me, Rob." I yelled into a dead phone. He had hung up. I felt Rob was trying to play on my emotions, hoping that I would react to the anguish he had portrayed over the phone, which would cause me to come to his aid. As I thought about it, there was nothing I could do other than tell him something that I know he wasn't going to do, and that was to call Barry. Barry had ties to a lot of influential people, and Barry would know what to do to help him. We talked about it in the past, and Barry said if Robert would call him, he wouldn't know what he would do. But I broke Barry down to recognizing that he loved Rob, and after a short debate, he agreed. R. Kelly needed to make amends to some wrongs he had done. He needed to fess up, come off the high horse he was on, and pull the team back together. We all wanted it, all the old crew. Larry, Barry, Tori, and Jomo. We all loved Robert, but he only thought of himself. After Rob hung up, I called Barry, but he did not answer his phone. He was en route to Atlanta, so I left a message. Rob called me. Can you believe it? Hit me when you get this. He called me as soon as he touched down in Atlanta. "Demetrius, did he call you for real?" he asked, without even saying hello first. I felt that Barry had an obsession with R. Kelly. He was his artist, and Barry wanted to be there for him. It was Kelly who made everything difficult. You think he'll call me? Barry asked, with a bit of hopeful excitement in his voice. I thought, I don't know, B. He was acting like he was crying, saying I'm an outlaw, I need you. And then, he hung up. I told Barry that Rob asked me to come down there with him. Barry was inquisitive as I was. For what? He asked. After we talked about Kelly's call for a few more moments, Barry advised me to stay away and that it could be a trick. He said Kelly was looking for a scapegoat. We both agreed my life was going fine without involving myself in something I have nothing to do with. Barry also assured me that whatever I decided to do, he'd stand behind me. With that said, I knew if Robert Kelly really wanted help this time, he would call me back. And if he would call, I would try to persuade him to come to LA. I felt it would help if I could get and Barry to sit down and talk. At least that is what I would have liked to have been able to make happen. Robert never called back, but General did. This dude was in Chicago with Kelly. Demetrius, I was with Kelly when he called you. I gave him your number. He called me in Philly, and as I was talking to him, I decided to come down and talk to him. General had flipped the script. Everybody looking for tapes and he got M. I was shocked when he was telling me he was in Chicago with Rob. Man, what are you talking about? General was all I asked. I didn't want a part in any type of double-cross scene. I didn't want to talk to this dude. He was up to no good. What are you up to, man? I asked him. Put Rob on the phone, I demanded of him. I was going to tell Rob of the snake he was keeping company with. I was going to tell him General was the one responsible for the tapes being put out. Man, I know how you feel about Kelly, man, and you know like I do who put that tape out, and that wasn't right, he said. What are you talking about? You the one circulating those tapes. Did you tell Robert that? I asked him. I told him I knew about them, and I told him Barry sent someone who bought the tapes from the contacts I knew of, and that you knew of Barry's involvement with the circulation of the tapes in regards to who got M and put M out, that is. General whispered into the phone, play along with me on this, Demetrius. We gon' get paid out of this. This dude was crazy. I thought, dude, who you playing with? What is wrong with you, man? I asked. Why would you lie? I asked him. Why would you tell him? I knew of something I did. What are you trying to do? I asked him. I was again being put in the middle of someone else's game of trying to come up by using me as a tool to help them prosper, and at the same time, they would call themselves looking out for me by making me some petty ass bullshit monetary offer. So I listened to General, and in my anger, I became heated. I shouted at him into the phone. Did you tell him who put the tapes out? Cause remember, you brought me to a house where you had boxes of copies ready to be distributed. Did you tell him that? I asked. General was dirty as dirt could be, yet he was attempting to keep himself looking squeaky clean. I was enraged at this dude, the nerve of him trying to use me to throw blame at me for something he did, and then to try and set me up to be a part of his scheme. I had thoughts of setting aside my righteousness, get on the plane and go to Chicago to set him out. General was, as Barry said of Rob, a piece of shit. General, I don't know what you're up to, but I don't want no part of it, and I'd appreciate it if you lose my number, because I bet you ain't told Rob what he do, promise you your record deal or something. I already knew that Barry wasn't interested in General's music, stating that he didn't feel he had what it took. Man, they said they would compensate you. Won't you just fly down here and talk to the man? He asked me as if he wasn't listening to anything I said, and talked like he thought I was listening to what he was saying. Man, listen, I said, if Kelly or Daryl want to talk to me about anything, they can come up here. You're perpetrating some crazy shit, General. I don't know why you would involve me with this. I'm out, man, and I'm gone. Let Barry know you putting his name in some shit. You sneaking man, and I ain't even trying to know where you at. I hung up the phone. It was some strange shit going on. I called Barry, I said when he answered the phone, laughing. Yeah, what's happening, man? He asked. Man, you ain't gon' believe this, I said. General just called after I got off the phone with you. He's down in Chicago with Kelly, I told him. He's in Chicago with Rob. For what? He asked. He called to try to get me to come there, saying they would compensate me. Compensate you for what? He asked. I explained everything that General and I talked about. Barry was upset and told me he would have to call me back later. He wanted to contact his lawyers, said he was going to put an end to the bullshit that was being stirred up. Well, like I said, Demetrius, if you feel that you've got something to offer them, then that's your choice if you want to go up there. No, B, I have no intention at all of going up there. I cut Barry off in the middle of his sentence. I didn't want him to have any notion at all that I wanted to leave LA to go talk to Rob. I felt Barry was feeling I was going to betray him and go lie on him, but that was not in me to lie about something I didn't know anything about. If he did have something to do with putting the tape out, he did so without me having any idea of it. This was the last straw for me. I was going to cut ties with everyone from this day forward. My whole life was being pulled in a direction I didn't want any parts of. There was evil in the midst of my association with Rob, and I wanted out for good. I was convinced no good was ever going to come about for me being involved with Robert Kelly. He's got them thinking, you had something to do with the distribution of the sex tape that's out, I said. Well, Demetrius, that guy will pretty much try to do anything or say anything to get a record deal. It wouldn't surprise me, nor does it worry me. I know what I do every day. He can say whatever he wants. He don't know nothing about me, Barry said. Let me call you back later. We'll talk then. All right then, B. I was just letting you know. I told General not to call me no more. I'll holler at you later, man, I said. All right, Demetrius. If you want to go up there to see if anything is in it for you, be careful, Barry said. I ain't going nowhere, B, to see nobody. I'll talk to you later, I said, and we hung up. Chapter 28. Tragedy Strikes. Barry and I were growing to have a greater respect for one another as men throughout this Kelly's saga/ordeal. Even though I didn't see him much at all while I was in LA, from our frequent phone conversations I was really getting to know him, and I had grown to have a great deal of respect for Mr. Hankerson. He and I had gone through a few mishaps from time to time, but he never talked at me in respect to teaching me the ropes of the business. He showed me when and where I would go wrong. He would also compliment me when I completed a certain task. In the earlier days, I used to think Barry was somewhat of a snake in the grass. During this time, I was getting to know the man and no longer saw him for who I thought he was. Getting to know Barry as a man helped me to understand the term, people don't believe what they see what they believe. I was getting to know Barry now as the good man that he was. He was no longer an image of a villain in my eyes. He was an inspiration of wisdom, and a main factor for my reason for being in LA. Things were going good for me during this time. With Barry helping me to get my life situated, I was making some real progress. My life was beginning to have some balance to it. The way my life was going with Barry in it, I could not help but think that this man had my best interest at heart. To come to think of it, whenever Barry was around, he wanted to see that I was coming up. He mentioned to me that he would be willing to match funds with me to help get a house for my children and I. Barry knew I was done working with or even wanting to work with Rob. I was putting the pieces to my life back together. Still, I had a condo. I had a good paying job working for UEI and attending to my children. They were involved in acting and taking vocal lessons with Ms. Jody Sellers, an awesome vocal teacher. I must mention this lady because she offered her services out of admiration for the support I was giving to my children. Twice a week, Jody would give my 4 children lessons. Also, I had the children working for a casting agency who kept me pretty busy employing them as extras in movies. My daughter Ashley and son Demetrius Jr., Michi, were both in Bow Wow's movie. Like Mike, and my youngest son DJ was on one of Bernie Mac's episodes of The Bernie Mac Show. It was August 25th, 2001, and I had just returned from a vocal lesson with Michi and Ashley. Finally, I thought, a chance to sit down to relax from a long busy day at the office. I turned on the television and a news broadcast came on announcing a plane crash that took the life of Aaliyah. My God, I can still feel the pain. I was heartbroken, as I know so many others who loved her were. No, I cried. Oh God, no, I cried. I could not believe the report I was hearing of her fatal accident. But I didn't want to hear it. I did not want for it to be true. In my pain, I thought about Barry, Aaliyah's parents, Mike and Diane, and her brother Rashad. Oh God was all I could think and say. The news of Aaliyah's death caused a pain in me that paused my breathing. Just when things were beginning to balance, I'm hit with another natural disaster. I could not begin to imagine the pain Barry had to have been experiencing, let alone Aaliyah's parents and her brother. I even thought about Rob. I knew all of them as well as a lot of people in the world were grieving. I hurt as well. My pain was for Aaliyah's mother. I felt for her. I called Barry. When he answered, I felt his pain. It was the first time I had ever heard him sound weak and hurt. I'm sorry, Barry, were the first words, and the only words I could muster up to say out of my mouth. I didn't know what else I could say that could comfort him in this time. If I could have been a tear that could relieve him and his family from the pain they were suffering, I would have taken their sorrow. Yeah, thanks, Johnny. Aaliyah's gone, man. I could tell that it took a lot for Barry to say those words. He was holding himself up through this tragic moment. I am sure his family needed him to be strong. Leah is gone and in God's hands now. He does what he do. I don't know, man, but she's gone. My niece is gone, Johnny, he said. Again, I could hear it in his voice. He was holding in his pain and not wanting to break down with me on the phone. He told me he had to keep himself together for the sake of his family. I didn't know what to say. I know his pain was deeper than mine. I sat holding my daughter as she cried in my arms. Barry, I'm here if you need me for anything, man, I told him. Yeah, I know, thanks. I'll talk to you later, he said and hung up. After Aaliyah's funeral, Barry and I still talked, but not as much. We both wondered how things might have turned out had R. Kelly not violated the family's trust. He insinuated that I, more than likely, would have been Aaliyah's tour manager, and I truly believe, had I been with Aaliyah, I would hope that things would have turned out better. God does what he does for his will through our purpose. We might not like it. In fact, we never like chastisements, nor do we understand the debt of chastisement. We just know that it hurts and somehow we make it through day by day. Some of us are never able to let go of the pain. My life continued with me working for the vocational college and making $45,000 a year, attending church regularly and being a single dad. Everything was going great. I joined the church choir and I had my children also active in the church. They formed a little group amongst themselves. They stirred up the Joe Jackson in me. I had them rehearsing, singing, and dancing every day. Life was beginning to really be fun. On top of that, I met a woman I was infatuated with. Veronica was her name. There she was sitting under a tree in Ladera Park with her daughter. They were a vision of loveliness, like a pretty picture. I couldn't get her off my heart, let alone my mind. Though I had just met her, she was the lady I wanted to be mine. Veronica was someone I wanted to make everything of the past I had gone through with other women work with her. She was everything I desired in the beauty of a woman. When I approached her, my words made her smile and laugh. Since she had her child with her, I sought to take advantage of an opportunity. I excused myself and quickly drove home, told my children to let's go to the park, and we rushed back to the park. All the way back, which was only a 10-minute drive, I was hoping the lady who had caught my eye was still there, and she was. She was surprised to see me back at the park and she thought it impressive of me to have gone to get my children. We sat enjoying each other's company, eating a hot dog and watching the children have fun. My life was about to open like a rose in blooming season. Everything was coming together. I had a good job. I was working for UEI, the United Education Institute. I was being paid good money. I had my children with me. I had a condo. I was into church at the City of Refuge where I was involved with helping to teach kids in Sunday school, and I had met a woman I thought was everything I wanted in a woman. Life had a smile on my heart. But as I stated before, I am Murphy Law Jr. Anything that could go wrong for me, did. I had the luck of a black cat. Out of nowhere, another storm came into my life like a hurricane and tore my world apart. I'll call this storm Hurricane Furlough. Man, it is always some dumb and stupid stuff that can so easily snatch your life away from you. On Labor Day, August 29, 2003, I was home relaxing with Veronica. This was the first day she had decided to come over to spend the weekend with me, and it was our first time being with each other. We had only been kissing friends up until then. My sons Dion and DJ came into the house somewhat frightened, as they told me that Mr. Furlough's pit bulldog viciously attacked the basketball they were playing with in our backyard. I got up from the bed to go have a talk with our neighbor, Kenneth Furlough. As I approached him on the patio area of our complex, with my sons following behind me, I picked up from his greeting he had been drinking. My approach to him was respectful. Furlough was 6'5" and 265 lbs. I wasn't looking for trouble. Ken, how you doing, man? I said to him as I walked up on him preparing to get his grill started up. Hey man, what's happening? He said with a loud slurred voice. He had started his day off drinking early. I was very respectful to Ken. Your dog got loose and my boys came in the house scared with the ball busted and ripped, showing him the ball as I made my petition to him. They shouldn't have their toys and things in the back area anyway, he said. I thought he was way out of line, and I didn't feel this was going to go the right way, so I stepped back from him. Can I'ma talk to you later? You're kind of tipsy right now, I told him, and I turned to leave, asking him to please tie his dog down. I gathered my sons together, and we returned to the house. Ken was securing his dog as we were walking away. I gave them another ball to play with, hoping all would go well. We weren't bad neighbors. In fact, we got along pretty good. We even shared a drink, a smoke, and a meal together from time to time. I knew it was the alcohol altering his thinking. It was less than 15 minutes when my sons came running back into the house, showing another busted ball. Daddy, Mr. Ken's dog keeps chasing us and he busted your ball too, my son Dion said, handing me the busted ball. Veronica suggested that I call the police and have them get Ken to restrain his dog, but I was enraged. I jumped up out of bed with my beautiful Salvadorian woman to go back again and confront Ken about his dog. I wanted him to pay for the ball now. Baby, don't go out there. call the police. Let them deal with that man and that dog, Veronica said as I was walking out the door. When I got to the patio where Ken was, some of his family members were out there with him this time. There were a few older ladies, maybe his mom, his wife, and a couple of guys. Seeing that there were ladies there made me calm down. I wasn't about to lose my cool and be disrespectful. I walked up with my sons behind me. I thought they were in the house, but they were right on my heels. I walked up slowly to Ken as he was standing at the table with the ladies talking. Can I talk to you for a moment? I said respectfully and nodded. How are you? To the mothers who were at the table. Ken got loud. Now what do you want? His voice was slurping as saliva splattered from his mouth. Ken, you gotta get your dog, man. He done bit up another one of my balls and chasing my children, man. Come on, man, humbly I appealed to him. I'm asking you, Ken, man, to please tie your dog down. Everyone's eyes were on us. Ken irritated me. He was drunk and out of his mind. Man, who the fuck you think you is? I ain't got to tie my dog down, shit, he said. I just didn't dig his lack of respect for me and my children, but my thoughts were to remain respectful because of the women that were present. Again, I got my sons by the hand and turned to walk back home. Imma, call the police. They'll be coming to see you about your dog. I ain't gon' deal with it anymore, I told him. Ken walked behind me, yelling obscenities as he followed behind me. Motherfucker, you ain't gon' do shit to my dog. When I went to my garage, I told my sons to go into the house. Ken, you need to stop walking up on me, I told him as he continued to come towards me. My son's scooter was in the way of me closing the garage door, so I reached down to move it, and Ken stepped up and hit me in the jaw. At this time, I had the scooter in my hand. I looked at him as though I was in a daze and about to fall down and asked him, why you hit me, man? And at the same time, I saw one of his male friends or family members who had followed him down the stairs coming around the pole towards me. While Ken came towards me again ready to hit me, I instinctively busted him in the head with the scooter. He fell back as blood came pouring out of his head, covering his face. I heard his wife scream at Ken telling him to stop, but as he tried to stand to come at me again, I slowly stepped back and into my garage, all along watching the man that was with Ken as he went to Ken's aid, to help him stand. I walked away and closed my garage. I was scared. I was hoping I hadn't hurt the man that badly, but he brought it on himself. I was definitely defending myself. In a quaking moment, all hell broke loose. Ken's sons were trying to get into my house by climbing over my patio. I chased them away with a bat, but at the same time, my door was being pounded on. I went down to open it with an old antique revolutionary pistol I had in my hand. When I snatched the door open, it was the Inglewood police. They saw the gun and immediately withdrew theirs from their holster. I dropped mine. I felt I was lucky they didn't have their guns drawn already when they came to my door. After I explained what happened, I was arrested and charged with assault with a deadly weapon for hitting Ken with the scooter. They didn't do anything about the pistol I had. They knew it was outdated and it didn't work. I stayed in LA County Jail for 2 days while Veronica and Lena, my children's babysitter, came up with $5,000 bail to get me out. My whole life changed after that day. When I went to court, the judge ordered me to not go back to my apartment. The restraining order that was placed on me said I could not be within 500 feet of Ken. The judge had no regard whatsoever for the fact that I was attacked or the fact that Ken followed me onto my property. He didn't care that I had nowhere else to go, or that I was a single parent, responsible for the lives of 4 young children. The judge didn't want to hear anything I had to say. I was left without a choice. I had to move, and I had to move right away. The little money I saved had to be spent on a 2-bedroom apartment that I found in Hawthorne. All of my expenses doubled and it was costing me an arm and a leg transporting the kids back and forth to school, me getting to work, food, moving expenses and the cost for storage. My life did a 360-degree turn over the course of a moment. I went back and forth to court, then I finally accepted a deal of probation, a $5,000 fine and a $5,000 restitution cost for Ken's hospital bill. I stopped going to church. I was ashamed of myself for allowing the devil to pull me out of my comfort zone. I couldn't face the children or the members of the church that knew me and who looked up to me, even though they probably didn't know what I did or had gone through. I just couldn't face them. Being in Hawthorne was too far for Veronica to travel to see me, so she became distant. I was frustrated. My life was going downhill again. I started smoking weed again. The next thing you know, I was trying to make ends meet hanging out and wasting my money at the Hollywood Park Casino, playing poker. I had to find a way to come up. Everything was falling apart. A friend of mine, Frank Wilson Sr., knew somebody that got me a 3-bedroom apartment in the jungle. Even though Frank tried to discourage me from moving into the jungle, he said it too rough in the jungle for young boys there. Frank felt that I was putting my son's life in danger living there. but in spite of what thought, little did he know, I had grown up in this environment and now I was here with my children to raise them. We were going to have to weather the storm together, I thought, because the size of the apartment and the rent was compatible to my needs. Believe it or not, I was comfortable living in the jungle. It was almost like the west side of Chicago. During the course of all the drama I was going through, Veronica and I broke up. As much as I thought we were a perfect pair, again, my heart was crushed. As I tried to put my life together, I was slowly pulling it apart, trying to do it all on my own. Barry and I were still talking, but my pride wouldn't allow me to continue asking him for money. He had helped me so much already since being in LA. Chapter 29. I surrender. One day after work, as I was getting into my car, I noticed a note under my windshield wiper, which read, "Call me, and don't be scared." I knew it was one of my students. They flirted with me all the time. After several days, one evening, I called the number. I was stressed out and lonely. I was missing Veronica. "Hello," I said. "Hi, who is this?" asked a female with a soft voice. "This is Demetrius. Someone left a note on my car, and just to show that I'm not scared, I'm calling," I said. She laughed. Adriana was her name. Anna was who we called her. A week had passed, and after which, we hooked up. She was a student I had enrolled in school. Anna came into my life and helped me to get it back on track. She thought a lot of me, and I didn't want to let her down by being anything less than the man she was attracted to. As we began to spend time together, she got to know my children, and we got to know her son, Dion. It was comfortable being with Anna. She lead me back to the church, and on several occasions, she would attend services along with me. Anna had been through some hard times herself, but she was a survivor with a heart like mine. I was still trying to come up because all of my bills were backed up. I put aside my spirituality and became impatient. I couldn't pay my bills because I still had to attend anger management classes every week and pay $50 a session. Also, I had to pay Ken $180 a month for restitution. Every time I take my mind off the joy of the Lord, my life takes a turn for the worse. Isaiah 54:17 says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." I had become a weapon against myself. God made a way out for me when there seemed to be no way, but this time things worked against me. It started when I was gambling. I was losing more than I was winning, taking myself deeper into debt. I started shoplifting. Dressed like a businessman, I would walk into Target department stores, empty display cases that were full of iPods, put them in a basket, and walk straight out of the door. The first time I did it, I got away with it. That was easy as hell, and I made so much money selling the iPods for half price on the streets. I began traveling to different Targets and Walmarts every day, repeating the act until I was finally caught. I was fortunate the first time to have made enough money to bail myself out of jail. Before word got out to all the other Targets I had ripped off, my picture was floating around. Things just started going bad for me, and it was all because I was making bad decisions. I had been in LA for 5 years and should have been getting settled and ready to buy a house, but I jumped on a fast track back into the stupidity of my youth, and though I fooled myself into believing that I was invincible, God was covering me, even as I stole. I got real sick in the winter of 2004 with a viral infection in my throat and couldn't work for a month. This put me behind on my bills, so deep that when I was able to go back to work, I was laid off. Living off unemployment, things got real rough. My children weren't happy in the schools they were in. Things were going downhill. I decided to call my sisters Linda and Dee Dee in Illinois. I told them I was having a hard time and asked if they would take my children. They had no problem at all taking them back. My sister Linda told me she was missing her boys anyway. I was so thankful and blessed to have sisters that truly had love for me. I don't know what I would have done or where I would have been without my sisters. God puts people in our lives for a reason. I knew He knew what I was going through and how much I wanted to have my children with me, but I didn't know how to wait on Him. I was doing what I felt I had to do to make my situation better. God knows I didn't want to hurt anybody, and I didn't want to be separated from my children. One thing was for sure, with what I was doing, I was taking a chance at getting in trouble. I didn't want to be locked up and my children stuck in LA under Children and Family Services, so I was going to do what I thought was best for them, take them back to my sisters. My mind was made up. I had to make some money. I was an angry man, living on the edge. I was tired of it, always starting over, never getting ahead. Like 50 Cent said, get rich or die trying. I was in that state of mind. I was in the world and around people every day, but I was so alone. I had a feeling that things were going to go bad for me sooner or later, but at the same time I had a feeling of invincibility. Kind of like the time I went to jail when I did the burglary with Bobby back in the day. I had that same helpless feeling where by the time the police pulled up on me, I was reaching out to anyone, but no one was there. No one could hear me cry out, and no one took time to look at my anguish. All I wanted were the basics in life, to be able to provide for my children, put a roof over our heads, and a job, and I would have been content. But it seemed so hard for me to be able to do that. No one knew how deeply I was hurting inside. No one seemed to ever ask, "How are you, really? Or are you going to be okay?" Nobody asked, "What are you going to do?" No one looked into my eyes to see the pain and the burden I was carrying, living without my children, who I knew were going to miss and need me. My whole life seemed to be a merry-go-round of pain. I just could not seem to pull things together to save my life. I was tired. I didn't want to steal. I didn't want to do wrong, but I wanted my own. The saying goes, God bless the child that's got his own. In my heart, I wanted to be right and do right in God's eyes. I never doubted God had a covering over me, but I did wonder why there was always disappointment for me when I was at the brink of accomplishing something. As much as people used to tell me I was blessed, I felt He was looking past me when I needed Him the most because I didn't feel blessed at all. In fact, I felt cursed. I rented a room at the Courtyard by Marriott Hotel in Hammond, Indiana, for me and my children to stay in, so we could spend some time together before I took 3 of them to my sister's and put my son Demetrius Jr. on a plane back to his mother in Georgia. The hotel was nice. It had an indoor pool, kitchenette inside the room, a weight room, and all of the comforts of a home. The only thing was that I was low on funds. After we left the pool, I told them to wait in the room while I went out to get pizza. While going to get pizza, I saw a Target store in Calumet City not far from the hotel and decided to go inside and look it over to see if it was indeed a Target for me to hit. The store was crowded, and it appeared to be ripe for the taking. I decided to take advantage of the opportunity and emptied the glass case full of about 80 iPods into a plastic garbage can, walked right past the front register, as if I had paid for the garbage, and went out the door. On my way to my car, pushing the cart, I looked behind me and saw the store security running out towards me. I turned to push the cart at them in hopes they would go after the merchandise, but they didn't. One went after the cart, and the other 2 came running hard towards me. I ran in the opposite direction from where my car was. As I was running, I thought about my children. They were in the hotel alone, with no adult supervision. Oh my God, I thought. I had fucked up and fucked up bad. My mind was racing faster than my feet were running. With the security gaining on me, I pulled my cell phone from my pocket and called my brother Eric. He had been over to the hotel to visit earlier in the day, so he knew exactly where we were staying. It was crazy the way I went in my pocket for the phone. If those security guards had guns, they would have assumed I was pulling out a gun, and would have had every reason in the world to shoot me. "Please answer, Eric," I cried out as I was running and pressing buttons on the phone. He answered. "What's up, Jay?" he said. "Eric, the police are after me. I don't know if I can get away. The kids are at the hotel. Man, you gotta go get 'em," I cried out. "Okay, Jay, where you at?" he asked. "In Calumet City. Get the kids, Eric. Please get 'em. They by theirselves, Eric," I screamed into the phone. By that time, the security guards were right up on me. I turned around and one was running at me so fast he couldn't stop. Once he got up on me, I ducked as he grabbed at me, lifted him up and threw him over my back. I began to run through the parked cars, hoping I could duck out of their sight, if only for a moment, so I could get to my car. As I got ready to cross over to the other side of the cars, city detective cars were pulling up. At that point, I had nowhere to go, so I turned around. One of the store security officers was coming up behind me. I pleaded with him as he got in hearing range. "Man, please let me get away. My kids, man, are at the hotel. We didn't have no food, man. Come on, man, please." My plea was in vain as he grabbed me. I pleaded and fought him at the same time, hoping he would be compassionate and let me slip away. He wasn't hearing me, so I got desperate and punched him in the jaw, knocking him back. I got past him, but it was a useless struggle. It seemed a whole police force was there, and now all of them were grabbing at me, and when I went down to the ground, every one of them was punching and kicking me. I was taken to Calumet City Police Department. My eye was swollen and my lip busted, but I wasn't feeling any pain, at least not in that sense. I shouted out in anger for them to allow me to make my one phone call. I told them my children were alone. All they wanted to know was where they were. I knew I couldn't tell them that. I was counting on my brother to pick them up. They threw me in a cell, and after ranting and raving about a phone call, one of the officers came to the cell and sprayed me with mace. That shit didn't bother me. It was worth it watching him get angry as I called him a bunch of bitches and hoes, and he couldn't do nothing about it. I was angry at myself. Why couldn't I just hang out with my children? I was so disgusted with myself. It was 4 hours later when I was allowed to make a phone call. I was relieved to know my brother had picked up my children. After getting that information, I let all my worries go. Besides, what would worrying accomplish for me now? I thought. I knew where I was going. After I was processed and taken to court the next morning, I was taken to the Cook County Jail. My bond was set at $75,000. I was caught up again. The county jail wasn't a joke either. It had been a while since I was there. The jail was full of younger men. I say that because every greeting I received from anyone was "what's happening, Ugh?" They snapped me into the reality of knowing I was much older, and I felt life was passing me by. Whenever I was allowed to go into the day room where they played cards, dominoes, and chess, I pretty much stayed to myself. I didn't know what was ahead for me, other than having a feeling that I was going to have to do some real time. Often I was disturbed by the character of my younger generation. Every word that came out of their mouths was nigger this and nigger that. What's up, nigger? This disturbed me as I laid in my cell listening to them shout out at one another as if it was just a common thing. They had no idea of the pain that black people suffered being subjected to being called a nigger, the sacrifices and lives our people gave to free us of the racial bonds. They had no notion of what Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X stood for. I was ill-humored by this and became belligerent when I heard a Latino in the cell beside mine yell out to a brother as he was talking, "Fuck you talking about nigger." I had heard all I could listen to and spoke out loud over the tear. "You brothers need to stop using the N-word as if you don't know where that word comes from, man." It got real quiet on the deck. I knew I woke up some of the thug spirits that were confined right along with me. So I went on to tell everybody how I was disturbed by the use of that word, and I made sure the Latino next to me knew I took offense to him saying it. "Man, who the fuck is you?" A youngster said. "My name is Smithy, man, that's who I am, and I got a problem with the use of that word. I don't mean anybody any disrespect, but I'm from that era, and if you got a problem with that then we got a problem." I told him, "Nigga, I'm gon' say what the fuck I wanna say and how the fuck I wanna say it, nigga. I don't know who the fuck you think you talking to," the young, stupid motherfucker said. "Nigga, I know if you call me that one more time, I'ma let you know who you talking to, little, stupid motherfucker," I called him. I didn't care. I was a bundle of guilt, seeking punishment. I was numb in the whole matter. I didn't feel anything. I probably needed to have my ass whooped anyway, for ending up as I was, locked up in a 6 times 8 feet steel cell cage. I didn't see myself going home. My decisions had shaped another passage for the direction my life was now heading. It wasn't about the thought of being taken out of my misery. It was about my misery taking off on this dude to relieve some pressure. I was in a whole different frame of mind. I wasn't new to this environment. This time though, my inner thoughts were somewhat welcoming the challenge of where I was. This was where I had to be now. I heard my cousin, Junebug's voice, "When you in Rome, cuz, you got to do what the Romans do." This place was a Rome to me. In this place, it was another country, where the laws were entirely different, and the rules, they had all been broken. I was another man standing up, holding onto the bars and looking out at the wall with my forehead laid into the bars. I was indeed, an og. I didn't have a pot to piss in. I was mad at world and wallowing in my own self-inflicted sorrow. I couldn't help but think about it over and over again, the fact that it had been going on 20 years since I had been locked up or arrested for that matter. All I had now was regret, and I didn't see any way for me to get back at it. I wasn't going to be in denial or try to seek help. It was evident to me now that I really was a crazy man. The lives I had abandoned and the people I had let down, and not to mention the opportunities I had had. Yeah, looking back on those and being where I was, I had to be a crazy person, right? Something had to be wrong with me. I was a stupid man in my book. In my mind, in the direction my life was now heading, I was going to live my life conscious of how I had lived. I was now going to be consciously crazy and fucking stupid. There was comeliness for me as I thought of the present situation I was in. It was only because I believed I was standing up for something I felt was right that made it easier for me to accept the "I didn't give a shit" attitude I had about my life. There was one thing I did know as I thought about how I had just picked a fight. I knew that cultural disrespect, and using the word as they were using it was cultural disrespect. I knew that that kind of insolence would not be tolerated behind the wall. So, I felt good about feeling crazy because I was justified this time. Og snapped on the young boy. I was hearing people yelling in my head. Yeah, but he was right, I would hear another voice say. There was stillness to my thoughts. I needed to feel like I was alive. Og, y'all needs to chill with that, one of the other inmates said. I'll see you when the doors roll, Og, the ignorant little youngster yelled out. I knew I had gotten myself into a situation. I didn't have a problem with it. I wanted to feel something. Pain. I felt it was a part of me. This time, I was not going to beat up on myself anymore. I was going to be crazy. Shit, it was what I was. When the doors rolled, we got down. The fight didn't last long. We were in a little bitty cell, and as soon as I went into the cell and he came in, I went straight to work on him. There was nothing to talk about. We were there to fight and settle a difference. It was all a matter of respect. I didn't give him a chance to get his vision as I hit him in his left eye with a jab and then an overhand right to that same eye. I kept on punching his ass till one of the older brothers pulled me off him. I let up off him and went to the day room to sit down as if nothing happened. I was the talk of the tier. Because of what we were fighting about, I was allowed to go one-on-one with the boy. He was gang related and I was an Og. When the young gangster came out, his eye was fucked up. He didn't say anything to me, and I didn't say anything to him. A few brothers came up to me to compliment me for whipping the boy's ass. He had a big mouth anyway, one of the guys said. After that little confrontation, the N-word was still used, but a member of the Vice Lords and one of the disciple leaders both told their people to refrain from using the word. I still heard it, but they were conscious and apologetic when someone would say it. That was worth the fight to me. I gained respect, made a few friends, and I made a few enemies. I didn't give a care about the enemies. I was mad at the world. Sitting up in the county jail, I made up in my mind whenever I got out of there, I was going for it. I was going to get money any way I could. I just didn't see a way around it. I couldn't get a job anywhere, and I wasn't going to continue to ask people for money. I was allowing my heart to turn cold. All my beliefs, my spirituality, the thoughts I had of feeling guilty for doing wrong, they were going to stay locked up inside of me. This was a cold, cold world I was living in. Even though I knew I wasn't going to be getting out of jail anytime soon, I was having thoughts in the direction of the type of person I was going to be once I was released. Hate consumed me. The thought of living a lifestyle of a gangster was overwhelmingly appealing to me. I was convinced that good guys finish last. I was through with allowing people to take me for granted. I did not want to be Mr. Loyalty and Nice anymore. The notorious John Dillinger came to my mind. I wanted to be just like him. I was going to go hard at getting some money for myself, and if I could help my children that would be even better. I wanted to be hard. It was the only way I could think for now. I really didn't care anymore. I figured I had been a good person all my life, and the only time life had anything to offer me was when I took it. If I was going to end up in jail, then that's where I was going to be. My anger led my mind to wanting to be a hardcore criminal. I felt that I had lost everything that meant anything to me anyway. I made a fool out of myself by getting locked up and leaving my children in a hotel. I allowed myself to once again be taken out of my children's life. My world was crushed as far as I was concerned. It didn't matter to me whether I lived or died. All I knew was if I was to live, I was going to go hard in the paint, as my boy Tweet would say, to get my money. I didn't know what was going to happen to me and how I was going to get off from under this case. I was alone again, and I couldn't call anybody in my family. Everybody's damn phone was blocked. So I felt like nobody wanted to or needed to hear from me. The only people I was able to call was my son's grandmother, Dorothy, and my girlfriend Anna. I would call Dorothy, and she would make calls for me to my family to let them know I was alright. After 2 weeks in the county jail, I was sitting in my cell and got called for an unexpected visit. Who the heck is coming to visit? It was Daryl McDavid, R. Kelly's business manager. How did he know I was in jail? What the hell's going on? I thought. It looked like R. Kelly could not get out of my life. They had been following me. They went to California to get to me. What did I have that they wanted? I didn't have a clue. I guess with me being locked up, it was another opportunity for them to shoot another shot at me. What could I tell them that could get me out of here? Were the thoughts I began to formulate in my mind. During this time, R. Kelly had been indicted on distribution of child pornography charges, so I figured they were searching for a way to get Robert off the chopping block. Nothing had changed with Rob. He sent Daryl to try to convince me to sign a statement stating Barry Hankerson was the one who put the videotapes out. During the visit, Daryl told me Robert was willing to get me out of jail, give me some money and have his attorneys represent me with the case I was on. The getting out part sounded good to my ears. I didn't know what it was they wanted to hear from me, but I wasn't going to lie on a person. I actually didn't know anything about the distribution of the video, but if they thought I did, I was going to ride it out with them as far as I could go. My trial date was coming up and I knew if I had a good lawyer, it was possible I could get out from under this case. Daryl promised an attorney would be there on my trial date to represent me. I wasn't going to tell these cats to go away. I wanted out. My faith was willing to find a way. The preliminary was important. If I could just get the lawyer to beat my case in the preliminary hearing, Rob and his lawyers could all kiss my ass. They already knew General had taken the tapes, and that's the only part of it I knew. I didn't get into their business where I was allowed to profit anything. On my hearing date, a lawyer was there to represent me. Because I had not written anything other than what they already knew, they wanted me to sign some papers they put together. When I wouldn't, the attorney asked the judge for a continuance for the following day. At that hearing, they withdrew as my representative. I hadn't talked to Barry for months. I could only call Dorothy and Anna collect from the jail. I had been locked up for 3 months when my mom told me Barry called inquiring about me. She told him where I was, and of course, he asked her why I hadn't called him if I was having a hard time. I guess he got to know my mother over the phone because she got him to get me out. When I called him to thank him, he told me he bailed me out because of my mother. I was somewhat ashamed of myself. I got lost for no reason at all, and sacrificed the safety and security of my children for material gain. When I got out of Cook County Jail, it was rough. My brothers Eric and Joshua picked me up. Josh was home for a leave from the Air Force, and Eric had just gotten out of the joint up in Wisconsin. Nobody had money. There I was stuck in Chicago. No money. My children were here and there. Nobody could really take me in. What's a man to do? It was wintertime in Chicago and I didn't have a dime, so I called my friend Larry Hood. Larry gave me money to help me get back to LA. I felt like the only one I could turn to was Anna, my beautiful Miss Dark and lovely. She had her own place since her nursing job came through. I thought about her and I being together. It was an uncomfortable of the two of us together, but still no money. I couldn't be under my woman like this. All I had was my Jeep Cherokee. The plates were expired. The repo man was looking for it and it was hard getting gas money. Things were rough. How was I going to get back to Chicago for court? All kinds of things were on my mind. I snapped and began to bring forth the reality of the thought I had planted in my mind during my incarceration. I didn't have a pistol and I was not really ready to step up to that level as of yet. But at the same time, if you didn't have a gun and weren't willing to shoot me, you weren't going to stop me from getting away. I wanted to do good, but I was lost, and I could not seem to find my way back to that road. I was caught up again between a rock and a hard place. Romans 7:19 For the good that I will to do, I do not do, but the evil I will not to do, that I practice. Now if I do what I will not to do, it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me. I went to a Target store for about 40 or 50 iPods, the 8 gigs that were worth $400 a piece. I'd sell them for $200. After I got away with that one, I went buck wild. I hit a store every day for about 4 months. The money was flowing, and things were picking up. When I went to steal, I was doing it out of anger. I didn't want this lifestyle, but it was all that kept me going. Once again I thought I was invincible and that I was covered and protected, but Target had my picture in all their stores. Romans 7:24 A wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? Now I am in Solano State Prison, Vacaville, California, looking from the inside out. When I was in LA County Jail, I thought I would get a light sentence. After all, it had been over 19 years since I was involved in crime. I did well for years, I just backslid a little. I was never a professional criminal. I worked and enjoyed being employed. I was charged with commercial burglary, which carried a sentence of 16 months for the first offense, 2 years for a second offense, and 3 years maximum sentence for the crime. So I thought to even be sentenced to 3 years would be okay, and I was willing and ready to accept my punishment. But I was wrong. When I was told that I was looking at a life sentence for stealing, and they were serious, I almost lost my mind. It was only when I was on my way to court one morning, sitting in the bullpen, when this brother walked up to me and said, "My brother, I'm being led by the Spirit to tell you that God is with you." Thank you, I said to him, shaking my head up and down, receiving what he was telling me. I sat in sadness, wondering what fate had for me as I waited to be transported to court. The man paused in front of me, took a piece of paper, wrote the scripture down and handed it to me. God wants you to read this scripture, he said. I took the paper and put it in my pocket and thought to myself, God, I sure need you to be with me now. When I went to court on that day, the state's attorney offered me what he said was a deal, 19 years at 80%. What? Are you crazy? I ain't killed nobody or robbed nobody. I just stole something, I said. Yeah, but you have a strike for assault with a deadly weapon, and in 1980, you had an armed robbery charge in Illinois. That's 2 strikes, Mr. Smith, and along with the charges, you have now 22 counts of commercial burglary. You're looking at 25 years to life, Mr. Smith, if you don't take this deal, he said, trying to sound sympathetically serious. I threw my hands in the air. My life was over. To add insult to injury, he didn't stop there. He went on to tell me, if you end up going to trial and you are found guilty, you'll wish you would have taken these 19 years. You're out of your mind. 19 years is life to me, dude, I replied. Well, what do you want me to do, Mr. Smith? My public defender asked me. I'm not taking no 19 years, I told him. Okay, then we'll get a continuance and set a date for trial, he said. When I left the courthouse that day, my heart was hardened. My whole being again was numb. I didn't want to be bothered with anyone. I felt my blood pressure getting high and I was lightheaded. I asked to have my blood pressure checked. I was taking medication already to keep my blood pressure down and I didn't want to pass out. I just wanted to have my pressure checked. The officers paid me no attention as I yelled from my cell to be seen. When it was time to get my medication, I requested again to have my pressure checked. The medical technician told me to step away from the window and that he wasn't going to check me. Why not? I feel sick, man. I need you to check my blood pressure, I said rather loudly, only because I was hyperventilating. 3 guards ran towards where I was at, and when they got to me, they were yelling and hitting me at the same time. Get against the wall, they yelled. Before turning around to do so, I tried to explain to them that I just needed my blood pressure checked. Without saying a word in response to my appeal, they began to push me, knocking me down, and then they began kicking me, hitting me, punching me, and spraying me with mace. I was swollen up bad, but my blood pressure was what was scaring the hell out of me. It was 187/136. For that reason only, I was kept in the medical area for several hours and given medication to bring my pressure down. When it was okay for me to be transported back to my unit, I was taken to maximum security. I was locked up with the worst of the worst, housed in a single man cell, and every time I was taken somewhere, I was handcuffed and chained at the ankles. I didn't do anything to deserve that. I had only asked to be seen by a medical professional to have my blood pressure checked. In a cell by myself, no longer having to be surrounded by people, I had my much needed solitude. When I was placed in that cell and the guards left, I turned around and almost fell to my knees. There, drawn on the wall, was a life-sized figure of Jesus Christ carrying a cross. Whoever drew the image of Jesus on the wall was a true artist. The artist made Jesus look real, standing right in front of me. The cell was like a box, a little longer than my body. I'm 5'11", so the cell was maybe 6x9. There was only enough room for the toilet and the bed, so I couldn't turn anywhere in there without looking at the image of Jesus on the wall. The artwork was very graphic, detailing Jesus' pain with the crown of thorns meshed into his head. After being in the cell 45 minutes, a guard came to the cell to bring me the few personal items left in the other housing unit they had taken from me. Those items consisted of letters and my Bible, the only book one had. As I sat on the bunk, I opened my Bible and then remembered the piece of paper given to me by the man in the bullpen earlier that day. It was still in my pocket. I took it out and turned to the scripture he wrote on the paper. Jeremiah 29:11-15. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. 12. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. 13. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. 14. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile. As I sat in the cell after reading that scripture, I felt there was a reason I taken to that cell. I began to feel the burden of loneliness and depression lifted off me. I interpreted the scripture as saying to me that God led me there. From there I would pray to him with all my heart, and I would be heard, and it was there I found him. I fell down on my knees as Jesus stood above me carrying the cross, and I prayed. The days and weeks turned into months. Daily I began to write scriptures on the wall inside of the cross. Praying had become routine as well as me writing my life story. Daily I would write on paper, I would borrow or write on the back of other papers. No longer was I worrying about my situation. I had found my peace in this little cell. I was all alone, but I felt I was in the presence of comfort and love. I had the joy of the Lord on me. Jesus and I talked one-on-one every day. I read my Bible through and through, being led to the scriptures. I continued to write the scriptures on the wall, and those written scriptures taught me how to talk to God. I would let him lead me to scriptures by closing and opening the Bible again. A new scripture would be a response or answer to my prayer. There was no doubt about it. I had truly learned how to communicate with a higher power. Every time it was time for me to go to court, I took my Bible, my sword. As I sat in the bullpens, I would read and quote scriptures. I began to believe that I could ask for what I wanted and God would give it to me. When I went to court on September of 2006, my attorney, Ms. Warren, said, "Mr. Smith, you need to make a decision. Because if you go to trial, you're going to die in prison," she said. I looked at her with joy and said, "I have made a decision, Ms. Warren. You're fired. My family will get me an attorney. I don't know what it is you get out of sending a person to prison for years, but I know God doesn't like ugly. I only stole something and haven't been to prison or in trouble for over 19 years. If 19 years is the best you can do for me, then you do not have my best interest at heart. I can do bad by myself." I told her. She was speechless. I was shocked at myself for speaking so bold and clear to her. "If that's what you want to do, Mr. Smith, I'll tell the judge you're going to retain private counsel," she said. Then she stood up, looked at me with compassion and admiration and told me, "Good luck to you, Mr. Smith. I hope you come out well in this." That day I was given another continuance. I called Anna when I got back to the jail and had her call my sister Chi-Chi for me. Chi-Chi knew I was locked up, and she also knew when I got in trouble, I carried my own weight. Anna got Chi-Chi on the line. "Hey Chi-Chi." It felt good calling her name, knowing she was there. "Boy, I've been waiting for you to call me. What the hell took you so long?" There was happiness in her voice to hear from me, which gave me joy. She was her high-spirited self and not short with her words at all. I told her what I had been going through, and when I told her of the 19 years and the life sentence threats, she went there for me. "No, the hell they won't give you no fucking 19 years, bitch-ass jail system. You ain't did nothing but stole something. I'ma get somebody down there to talk to you." "Anna," she called. I let them talk over the phone and get acquainted. Anna knew what I needed. She had suggested I call Chi-Chi months ago. When I went to court, representation was there for me. Chi-Chi was sitting in the courtroom too, waving and smiling. She had come through for me. She was truly a sight for sore eyes. After the attorney she hired reviewed my case, he negotiated a deal for me to serve 5 years and 4 months. It was a long way from 19 years. My mind was relieved from the thought of 19 years in prison, but to me 5 years was a long time away from my children and from the support of Anna. I knew I was going to miss her too. I took the 64-month deal the lawyer got for me. I saw my former public defender, Ms. Warner, as I was leaving from the courtroom. I told her about the deal I took and she told me she was happy for me. After that careless comment, she didn't mean, I decided to let her know exactly how I felt. I told her she was wrong to represent people the way she did. I told her if I had not been able to afford private counsel, I would have ended up serving the rest of my life in jail with her representation. I also told her she was evil to have no concern for a man's life, and that people like her were the real criminals because they were selling people short, locking them up and giving them long sentences that did not fit the crime. I knew the state gets paid to lock us up and you got to have some money to stay out of jail. "Well, good luck, Mr. Smith," the evil woman said, walking away. It was 2 weeks later when I was transferred from LA County Jail to Solano State Prison. After being confined 23 hours a day, reading the Bible in solitude, I felt free and at peace. One would think I would have lost my mind, but I was filled with the joy of the Lord. On the way to prison, my thoughts were of me becoming a servant of the Lord. Everything else for me had always failed me. I knew I still had a lot of time remaining on my sentence. But as I had told the Lord, I would be ready to go when He felt I was ready. I didn't want to let Him down, and I didn't want to ever lose or turn away from this feeling of joy I had. Not again, not ever again. I didn't know what to expect at the next place I was being taken to, but I did know I wanted to continue studying my Bible. I arrived at Solano State Prison and was placed on the 1 yard in Building 2. It was a psycho building for people with disabilities and mental problems. I was placed on alert as being a nutcase for going off in the county jail, and to be honest, I had lost my mind. The old me was dying, and I was okay with that. What I wasn't okay with was the fact that I was placed in the cell with a guy that had life for beating his women and attempting to bury her alive. He actually turned out to be a good cellmate, and I would consider him a friend. It was after a month of my arrival that the prison went on a lockdown. It was strange to me because the only people who were locked down were the blacks. I found that to be racist. If one black got into any kind of confrontation with another race, all the blacks had to suffer for the incident. Slavery existed behind the walls of the California prison system. I had never experienced anything like it before in my life. Because I was black, I was placed in a gang in which we were called the Blacks. I found it insulting and humiliating to have to be subjected to being locked up in a cell for 9 straight months for doing no wrong, just simply because I was black. In Illinois, we would have torn the prison down. You cannot imagine the injustice that goes on behind the walls in the California prisons. That's a whole other story. But trust me, the men and women were treated and housed as if they were cattle. During the 9 months I stayed locked down, my new friend filled me in on the way things were run at the prison. When we were allowed to come off the lockdown, I kept to myself. I tried playing cards, dominoes, and all kinds of games, but they were a waste of time. I was not even allowed to go to church while I was locked down, but I still had the desire to seek that enriched feeling of joy that had overtaken me in the county jail. I didn't want to lose this feeling. I felt it was the reason I had to live. I felt whole and alive, and I didn't need anything. I was happy reading and learning how to have a relationship with God. I knew inside myself that if I didn't continue seeking the Lord, I didn't have a reason to live anymore. I felt I didn't have any other purpose to live for, unless I was dancing like David, for the joy of the Lord. The way the word unfolded to me when I was facing 19 years and ended up getting 5 just by asking. John 14:14 says, "If you ask anything in my name, I will do it." I was convinced by being shown that his word was real and had true power. I knew if I didn't keep this joy, I had no purpose in life. To just go to church and be able to sing again was something I was looking forward to doing. This richness I was feeling was not of worldly shallow things, but from our Father, as an irreplaceable fulfillment. I wanted my children to get to know me as a saved man. After a year on the 2-yard, I was transferred to the 4-yard because my points had been reduced and my security level went down. I was allowed to be housed in a dormitory unit. There I met a writer named John Javiel Smothers. Everybody in Solano knows him as Malachi. I mentioned to Malachi that I started writing while I was locked down in the county jail. Being locked down in a cell 23 hours a day, all I could do was release my thoughts on paper. Malachi became interested in my story and gave me direction on how to formulate a book. He encouraged me to continue writing down my thoughts and my past experiences. I started writing on a daily basis, and at the end of the day, I had converse with Malachi while he began to edit my work. The more I worked with him, the more I wrote, and the more I began to feel a testimony unfold. Malachi became busy with the prison obligations he had helping other inmates. He had a dedication to be a blessing to the brothers in the prison, so he taught classes, and he was a speaker when groups were held to prevent gang violence. Because he was so busy, he told me I didn't need him. He felt I was on the right path. With the knowledge he had in writing, he helped guide me, but the more I wrote, the more I knew what I was doing. I was really into writing and I found it to be very therapeutic. I was reliving moments I missed, and at times I found myself crying. I was feeling the pain from times in my past as if they were yesterday. Do I have regrets? Yes, I do. I regret I didn't let go of everything to raise my children because I felt they have suffered the most out of it all. As I lay here in this cell thinking of what I'm going to do when I get out of here, I'm scared. I'm not the same person going out as I was coming in. I don't have the same mind to be self-destructive. I've learned to think as well as react with a more rational mind. As I look back on those days, I forgive myself for the bad decisions I made. I know I had a guardian angel looking over me, and even as I lay here today, I feel covered. All of my children have since grown up and gone their own ways without me. Demetrius Smith Jr., Michi, resides in Georgia with his mother and his toddler son, my grandson, Demetrius Jadamere Smith. Ashley Tira has her daughter, my granddaughter Lauren. The twins Dane and Danda both are in college in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, living with my sister Linda. It would be a beautiful thing to go back out into the world and make a difference for the betterment of the lives of my children and the lives of the new people that will come into my life. I'm walking out of here for some reason, and I am going to stay on the course of righteousness. I should have been dead a long time ago. You're right, Mama. Apparently there is something he has for me to do. I pray I'm ready now. I have nothing but time, it seems. As one of my friends, Vincent Pari, told me, you have fallen many times and from many places, but your life continues to prevail because you have not fallen from God's grace. Thank you, Lord. Chapter 30, Under the Influence. So many years have passed since I've talked with Robert, Kelly, Daryl, and even Barry. After a long struggle, I was able to let go of that life, the era I stored in my memory under and Robert and Barry. I was so infatuated with that lifestyle, the things it provided, the journeys it offered, and the people it placed me with. I lost my way. I am clean and sober without regret in my history. I have made a lot of bad decisions, but I survived to tell my story. I followed the wrong people, places, and things and lost my life, my children, and my integrity. I was the man behind the man, which meant nothing to the world, but everybody's fall guy. I was so busy making sure that everybody's life around me ran smoothly that I forgot to take care of my own. I didn't provide what my family needed most, which was for me to be the head of the family and to be there. It was my duty to love and provide for my family through the body of Christ. It was me that continuously invited the devil into our dwelling. Most of all, I never invited God in with my heart. I meant well and my intentions were always for the good, but I always allowed the devil to occupy even the smallest space in my mind. He was always in my company, and it was not until now that I realized that he is someone who has been by my side for the past 54 years without me being aware of it. He accompanied and protected me throughout my life. The man behind the man is the guardian angel God assigned to watch over and protect me. That angel is real in my life. I remember once I attempted to rob a guy at a used car lot with a fake pistol. When I pulled the pistol out and began to raise it on him, the guy was faster than me. He pulled a pistol on me and pulled the trigger. Click, click was what I heard, and I was standing still, stunned at the thought that I was dead, but I wasn't. The man stood shocked as well that his gun didn't fire. I turned and ran. Thinking of that moment, now I know I had to have had somebody looking over me throughout my life. Jeremiah 1:5 says, Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I have appointed you a prophet to the nations. God, you are amazing. Thank you, God, for keeping me. Thank you, God, for loving me enough to assign your archangel Uriel to me. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. Psalms 1:6. I know it is only by your grace and mercy I live. I will trust in you. It is March 20th, 2010. I am to be released in 3 days. It's been 4 years, and now I'm going back out into the world, and it feels like it was only yesterday. Except now I'm older. I won't have a car or money, and I'm going back to the same cold world. Life is a bitch, and this I cosign. I have nothing but the clothes and shoes that I had before I was locked up. My intentions are not to have a pity party. I don't celebrate failure in any way. This is my release, my closure to the old life as I saw it. At this moment, I am letting it all go. I feel as if a burden has been lifted from my soul, and this time, when I start over, it will be my first chance at making a good life for myself and my family. My God is a jealous God. I am blessed. I feel like I have lived 9 lives, like a lucky cat. But I have proven to be far from fortunate, so I know for sure I am blessed and highly favored, and this will be the beginning of the rest of my life. My hope is in Jesus. Philippians 3:14 says, I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This is my prayer. Hear me, Lord. In Micah 7:19, it is said, You will have compassion on us, and will subdue our iniquities. You will cast all our sins into the depths of the sea. Cleanse me of my sins, Father God, my sins of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Strengthen me through my sin. Jeremiah 10:23-24 says, O Lord, I know the way of man is not in himself. It is not in man to direct his own steps. O Lord, correct me, but not with your anger, lest you bring me to nothing. As I walk out this gate, let your anointing be upon me, and let me be in your favor. I ask you to guide my steps. Turn me back to you, O Lord, and I will be restored. Renew my days of old. Lamentations 5:21. I am a wandering spirit without you, lost. Lord, you know me better than I know myself. You are the creator of all things, and by your will they exist and were created. Blessings and honor and glory and power be to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb forever and ever. I know that nothing is too big for you, Father God, so help me, Lord. I confess to you I am a sinner, but my heart wants to do right. 1 John 1:9 says, If we confess our sins, you will be faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Jeremiah 17:14 says, Heal me, O Lord, and I shall be healed. Save me, and I shall be saved, for you are my praise. Thank you, Father God, for the covering you placed over my life to make it out of this place. Thank you for Jesus Christ, your precious Lamb. Thank you for my family and for keeping them safe. Thank you for the people who are reading this. May they feel your presence and come to know Jesus. Oh Lord, I have learned that fear causes one to let go of the truth and the promise you have for us, so I will not fear what lies ahead for me. Chronicles 20:15 says, "Do not be afraid or dismayed because of the great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God's. I give it all to you, Lord, in Jesus' name, amen." Finale. Though it is hard to see how the next chapters of my life will turn out, I will rest assured knowing you, Lord God, are a God of happy endings and new beginnings. Exodus 34:9. If now I have found grace in your sight, O Lord, let my Lord, I pray, go among us, even though we are a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us as your own inheritance. Cause us to know the way in which we should walk, for we lift up our soul to you. In Jesus' name, amen. The beginning. Last night I had a dream. I dreamed I was walking along the beach with the Lord. Across the sky flashed scenes from my life. For each scene, I noticed two sets of footprints in the sand. One belonged to me, the other to the Lord. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand. I noticed that at many times along the path of my life, especially at the very lowest and saddest times, there was only one set of footprints. This really troubled me, so I asked the Lord about it. Lord, you said once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I noticed that during the saddest and most troublesome times of my life, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why, when I needed you the most, you would leave me. The Lord replied, "My son, my precious child, I love you and I would never leave you. During your times of suffering, when you could see only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you." Mary Stevenson Songer. Everyone has a story to tell and everyone's life has value. Our purpose, I believe, is for us all to be a blessing to one another's life. What you do today in your life affects the life of someone else. Your life, it's not all about you. Demetrius Smith, author. The Man Behind the Man / Looking from the Inside Out. October 2011.
Hello? Hello?
Sylvia, the live has ended a minute ago, but I think you were asleep.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that, y'all. Thank you for protecting me. I was taking care of something. Hold on. All right. She says he got out and testified against R. Kelly and got immunity. Wonder why there's not many in Awesome Show. Okay. All right. Let me end this and then it is 5:00. What time is it? Crap. All right, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.